A team stand up. Welcome into the spot. Brought to you by True North Fantasy Football and Monkey Knife Fight. This is the place to be on Saturday nights. The True North crew is in the house. We actually have our first guest in the spot this week. We're super excited about that. And it's the second episode of our Saturday night live sessions. I am Trav. I'm rocking out as always from Dirty Laundry Studios. You can find me at TSEAL14. I am joined by the True North Research Demon himself, Tyrell McLaughlin. You can find him on Twitter at TNFF Tyrell. Ty, what's going on tonight, my man?
Living the dream.
Absolutely, me too. And then we've got Brian Bailey, writer and contributor for True North. You can find him at the FF Aviator. Brian, how are things doing up at your altitude tonight?
It's good, man. It's good. Not very high though. I'm just Vancouver, which is sea level.
Well, that was actually both a pilot joke and a tall guy joke. Actually, is what that was.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Ty.
Oh yeah, smoky sky people.
Yeah, exactly. We've got from out in Calgary, Alberta, the home of mine and his Calgary Flames and delicious beef products. We've got Julian Barnett. You can find him at the Point After FF. Jules, how you doing out there, brother?
I'm great, man. I had a good time. I was hanging out with Will earlier, and I'm excited to get at it with you boys.
Absolutely. And what Julian is referring to there is the Point After Fantasy Football podcast with himself and usually with his partner Aaron, but Will was able to fill in tonight. So be on the lookout for that to release sometime tomorrow as well. And then last but certainly not least, our guest of honor for the night. He's a part of True North's extended family. He is one of the creators of Sons of Dynasty. You can find them at Dynasty Sons, and you can find this man at D.Brown FF88. We got Daniel Brown. Great to be back in the lab with you tonight, brother.
Appreciate you guys having me back in, man. I'm excited to talk some football with you guys tonight.
Yeah, it's always a good time when we get D.Brown on the stream. So I'm excited to fire into it. Real quick, I'm gonna let Ty kind of lead us into the week, gentlemen. Get us started on this week 9 adventure that we're about to journey on. But first, I want to give a couple quick shout outs. One is to a friend of Ty and mine from high school. He is a Canadian hip hop artist and he goes by Transit 22. Julian, he's actually out in your neck of the woods. Yeah. So he's out in Calgary. So I just want anybody who's listening or watching to go check out Transit 22 on Spotify or wherever you listen. His new single is called Open Blinds, and it's a really good one. And we're just kind of trying to help him pump it up. He's a fantasy football guy himself. So the second shout out that I wanted to do is with our partners over at Viridian Global. Of course, they are sweeping the nation. I actually have one of the brand new Viridian Football Collective t-shirts on right now. And the Viridian Football Collective is a group of fantasy football brands that Viridian does all the merch for. Will and Mark are doing great work over there. You can find brands such as the Undroppables. You can find Fantasy Football Astronauts, Dynasty Happy Hour, our friends at Goat District, and many more. So go check out ViridianGlobal.com and get yourself some gear. Check out the Viridian Football Collective. Okay, Ty, after all my yap in there, I'm going to kick it over to you, man, and get you to lead us into week 9 of our fantasy football week or seasons.
Yeah, and we all love week 9. Like, we're through the unofficial halfway point of the season, more than halfway through our fantasy season. And woefully, boys, we're through the trade deadline. I was hoping we get to chat about a few guys on new squads, but nope. And of course, the war of attrition is in full force. That rhymes, Marge. You know it rhymes. Admit it. So we have lots to sift through here tonight. I think lots of good stuff on the menu. We're going to hit all the matchups on tomorrow's slate. My rant is kind of to emphasize the litany of players and situations that are in flux right now, even sitting here on Saturday night. Like, we don't know. We have to kind of make tough decisions in a lot of these situations. So for the games, we'll hit the episode rundown. We'll hit betting lines, game totals, weather if need be, which I don't think there's many weather conditions that we have to battle tomorrow, but all the top storylines and themes inside of each matchup will offer all the matchup info and data, and we will be we'll be talking mostly like start decisions, start sits, and looking at the expert consensus rankings versus my boys around us here, and some buy and sell stuff. So for the players, we'll make sure we cover all the injuries, the ambiguity, and we'll marry that with all the information for the matchups. Even though if we talk about matchup info, I'm thinking about Jermichael Hasty on Thursday Night Football. The 49ers have scored the most PPR points as a running back position this year. And the team who had allowed the most fantasy points to the running back position this year was your Packers, Jules. And Trav, do you have a monkey knife fight challenge for us tonight?
Yeah, I'm gonna kick in somewhere on the star shootout. I haven't quite decided exactly where I'm gonna kick in, but I'll just rudely interrupt and we'll dive into some DFS player props with monkey knife fight and see if we can make a little cheddar.
Totally. And you know what else? I'm just thinking, like, we mentioned everything the teams are dealing with, in the NFL, there's COVID and injuries and everything. And one thing that's different for fantasy is injuries, COVID, like a bye week is a cold pillow, which is great if anyone didn't know. But for fantasy owners, a bye week is kind of the worst. And in week 9 here, there's about like 10 solid fantasy starters on bye. So really quick, the Rams, Eagles, Browns, and Bengals are on bye. So Rams, you got a couple wide receivers in Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, the Yak Twins. No Darrell Henderson at running back, no Goff and Superflex. Your Eagles are on bye. Any break from any NFC East team is a treat for fans of good football, though, right, Trav? But,
I'm not debating that, to be honest.
Do you think Dallas Goedert is coming back out of the Eagles bye, Trav?
I think it's looking like he might, but I'm not quite sure. I haven't got much report on that yet. I'm really eager to see once we get through the Monday game and we see the practices from next week, because I'm hoping, for me, he's a key piece on some of my rosters moving forward, but time will tell. That team's been kind of ravaged. So yeah.
Yeah, and so good timing for their bye week, nevertheless, allowing
100%.
them to just, they're going to get really healthy. Jalen Reagor, Miles Sanders. I think Zach Ertz will be back within like the next few weeks too, for whatever that's worth. So yeah, extra nice to see Dallas Goedert.
The tight end
That'd
too?
be awesome. Yeah, totally. And the Browns, so Nick Chubb, I think Nick Chubb's a big guy to monitor because he could be back as early as week 10. And sans Odell Beckham Jr., who's just a goner for the season, right? They have a lot of guys battling injury, so they're another team who could use the bye week. And speaking of which, the Bengals, maybe owners are looking for a quarterback this week. Burrow has been a legit starter for fantasy owners, and the volume, the schemes in Cincinnati, that's all led to Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, both to be in fantasy lineups every week. And AJ Green, he's there, he's just not getting it done. But Joe Mixon is another guy that fantasy owners will be very happy to get back in week 10. So why don't we just dive in here, guys? The first game, let's start with the Carolina Panthers at the Kansas City Chiefs. So this is a 10 a.m. game on the West Coast, 1 p.m. out there in the East. And the Chiefs are 10.5 point favorites at Arrowhead. So guys, this is a big spread for the 7-1 Chiefs at home against 3-5 reeling Panthers. But Kansas City is 6-2 against the spread this season, and the Panthers are 4-4 against the spread under new rule. So I don't think this is like a game that pops off the board. What stands out to me as we go under the fantasy lens is definitely the running back storylines on both sides, right? This is the return of Christian McCaffrey, the fantasy GOAT. And in Kansas City, we've seen plenty of Le'Veon Bell since he joined the team. Was it just a revenge game, since they were playing the Jets last week and Adam Gase, or should we actually be concerned about Clyde Edwards-Helaire? We're going to dive into that. But before we talk about the players, everything trickles down from the score, obviously, in fantasy. So how many points are going to be scored in this game? I want to ask about the total, because this feels like a pretty narrow range of outcomes matchup here. Kansas City is just a high-powered offense. Their defense has been excellent this year against the pass in total scoring, forcing turnovers. Meanwhile, the Panthers, led by Teddy Bridgewater, might have a hard time keeping pace. They're bottom 10 in points scored on offense, under 22.5 points per game. Chiefs are comfortably over 30. So this game, the total is 52.5. Are we smashing the under here? I'll go to you, Jules. What do you think?
Man, it's a tough line. I actually think this hits the over. I think 53 points is possible. When you look at this past Thursday and those garbage time points for San Francisco, I think that's something that can happen here, and those points still count when it comes to betting. So I'm going to take the over on this one. I think Pat Mahomes is, he's Pat Mahomes, man. Yeah, I don't need to say much there, but yeah.
Yeah, so let's start with these road dogs. Let's start with Carolina. Russell Okung, the Panthers' left tackle, he's doubtful for tomorrow. Just a little note. It's the only really bigger injury note for Carolina. And both these teams actually are kind of run funnel defenses, and that's where I want to start. Do you guys think, getting Christian McCaffrey back, we love this new exciting coaching staff, some of the electricity we've seen from this offense, the schemes, creativity, and for fantasy, Christian McCaffrey inserts immediately back into running back 1 slots, but there's been other fantasy players crushing it for the Panthers, and Carolina is alongside the Rams and the Seahawks is the only teams with multiple wide receivers in the top 16 right now in fantasy. So I want to go to you, D.Brown, because it's pretty close to your neck of the woods. Do you think with McCaffrey coming back, like, what are we doing with Robbie Anderson? What are we doing with DJ Moore? Or is this just a shot? Like, are we worried about those guys, or is this a shot in the arm for the whole offense?
I mean, I think that, while CMC might siphon a little bit of volume away from Robbie Anderson and other receivers, I think just the opportunity and what CMC provides, from a, play-by-play basis is going to open up plenty of other opportunity for the others still to be successful, even with a slight ding in the volume, perhaps. But, Mike Davis has played pretty admirably in CMC's absence. And while CMC is the GOAT on that team, Mike Davis is still probably going to see anywhere, from 10 to 12 touches a week, I think, moving forward. So while CMC might not get the volume he was getting originally last year, I think Mike Davis is still going to kind of be a thorn in his side. But, I think Teddy Bridgewater is going to stand to benefit the most out of anybody, just having CMC, having that weapon to be able to use out of the backfield. And the Panthers have to feel good about knowing when CMC comes off the field that they're sending Mike Davis out there who's perfectly capable, and he's shown that. So, all in all, I think it's good for the Panthers offense moving forward, even though CMC is going to come back and probably get a little bit more attention in general.
Yeah, and I think it's good for Christian McCaffrey, too. Like, you think about this offense, you mentioned it's just much better. And this team's on pace for far more red zone trips, far more red zone touchdowns. Why do I find that interesting? Because Christian McCaffrey, we all know, was about 10 points shy of breaking LaDainian Tomlinson's record last year for the best fantasy season of all time. Christian McCaffrey did that on 14 fewer touchdowns than LaDainian Tomlinson had during his majestic campaign. So that's pretty incredible. Brian, are you kind of with D.Brown here? Because I'm kind of with him too. Do you think Mike Davis factors in, or do you think this kills Mike Davis for fantasy?
I for the most part, I think it's going to kill him. Like, he's going to come in, he's going to get his touches in trying to spell McCaffrey off. I think they're probably not going to rush McCaffrey back to like 99% of the snaps like he was doing before. Maybe try and like ease him in just a little bit, coming off that injury, and know that they're going to be able to get like 80, the low point, 80% of what McCaffrey is going to give to them when they have to spell him out. They're just going to help make that whole offense just move a little bit easier and keep people fresh and still move the ball.
Totally. And I think it is like probably, somewhere in the middle for expectations. And I think there is a path. Like, if Christian McCaffrey can play out of the slot, Mike Davis can play out of the slot. They've both been very good there. And we know we love Joe Brady, passing game, the offensive coordinator in Carolina. So I think it's likely. It's not possible, but it's likely. And I think I would have, if Curtis Samuel didn't blow up last Thursday against your Falcons, D.Brown, I would have thought a lot differently. Let's put it that way. So, Travis, I'll ask you, because he quietly has just 4 fewer catches than DJ Moore right now. But was Week 8 an aberration against the Falcons, or is Curtis Samuel a guy we should be getting into our PPR lineups this week?
I think getting into our lineups is a little bit strong, especially with Christian McCaffrey coming back there. And I'm just to flip back to the Mike Davis talk, I'm a little bit lower than you guys, thinking that it might be like 6 to 10 touches as opposed to 10 to 15 for Mike Davis. But I think that just adds more touches to Christian McCaffrey and less touches for Curtis Samuel, because we saw in that game that Curtis Samuel was in the backfield like a fair bit. He was running some plays out of the backfield, and I don't think he's going to be doing that with both McCaffrey and Mike Davis healthy. So I think the spot for him would be the slot, or kind of moving around on some jet sweeps and stuff. So I don't think I'm putting him in my lineup this week, especially against that KC defense. But I mean, if you're hurting, or if you're in a really deep flex league, I could see you putting him down at the bottom of that starting roster. But I like to think that most people might have a better flex play than Curtis Samuel this week.
Yeah, and I think he's quietly creeping into that wide receiver 3 conversation. Like, he's technically a top 36 wide receiver in PPR right now. But we look at expert consensus ranking, they definitely agree with you, Trav. Sam is the wide receiver 42 in ECR. And this is a game that Carolina will be passing, but it's weird. Like, Kansas City's not allowing a ton of pass attempts, especially when you consider that teams are always playing from behind against them. So that was the easy Panthers wide receiver question. D.Brown, what do you think about DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson? I actually want to go around the horn and just ask really quick. What do you guys think rest of the season? Which one do you want more? And are either top 12 wide receivers in PPR like going forward?
I mean, as a big time dynasty, I've got a lot of shares of DJ Moore, so my tendencies want to lean towards DJ Moore. He's a better prospect, but if we're talking redraft here, I think Robbie Anderson's the answer. And as much as I love DJ Moore, and that hurts to say, Robbie Anderson has been nothing short of spectacular in his time in Carolina. Was a great value this offseason. In dynasty startups, he was going super late. Nobody was really sure what his role was going to be in Carolina, other than maybe a field stretcher. And he's come in and shown that he's much more than a field stretcher. They've got him running all sorts of routes, short, intermediate stuff that we weren't really seeing him do with the Jets. And so Robbie Anderson's been great, and I got to give him the nod as the wide receiver one as of right now in Carolina. And I do love DJ Moore, but Robbie Anderson has shown that his big play ability is going to keep him the 1A for me currently.
I'm gonna chime in there just to add to what D.Brown said, because I am team Robbie rest of season as well. The guy is a top 10 wide receiver in PPR right now. So the proof is kind of in the pudding there for me. He's top 10 in targets and receptions. He's number 3 in receiving yards. And he's number 11 in air yards. So he's getting lots of opportunity. And like D was saying, he gets a little bit of the different work this year. If you look at his average depth of target, it's 10 yards, which is 60th in the league, which isn't very Robbie Anderson of the past of him. And then he's even getting a little bit of yards after the catch on some of those short and intermediate routes at top 24 in yak per reception. So I am with you, D. I am team Robbie Anderson. And just looking at his weekly finishes, there could be a little bit of a buy window for redraft players right now for Robbie Anderson, because the past 3 weeks he has been a wide receiver 3 or worse. So if anybody's a little bit down on him, thinking the beginning of the season was a mirage, I might go see if I can acquire him on those start 3 wide receiver teams.
So that's kind of interesting. Like, I'm curious if this is kind of our wide receiver 2 in our lineups, you know what I mean? If it's Robbie or DJ Moore, and you're setting, say, a cash lineup in DFS, are you chasing like the upside wide receiver? Jules, I'll ask you, like, do you chase the wide receiver with the higher ceiling, or do you want the safer, more risk averse option? And do we know even which is which? Because like D.Brown and Trav are talking about, the roles have kind of flipped. Like DJ Moore has more air yards than Robbie Anderson right now.
Yeah, no, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I think that they're both, I don't really know which one is the upside guy. Last week we saw DJ Moore have some big plays, and then, down the stretch, but he didn't get involved at all early in the game. And, Robbie looks to have the trust of Teddy Bridgewater. And, I'm starting to lean that way too. I think this is the guy to own in that offense for the rest of the season, but that doesn't mean you can't play DJ Moore. I just think, I think there's a world where both these guys are top 20 wide receivers, and it ends 14 and 19.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of meeting the same conclusion. I think we all agree there. That's for sure. Trav, you mentioned the matchup this week. I think this is the week where these guys could start to fall down a little bit, just because the Chiefs have given up the 3rd fewest air yards on the season. For example, we talk about both these guys are top 12, and they allowed just 10 catches per game, just 128 yards receiving per game to this year to the entire wide receiver position. And my point is, the coverage, I think, is going to be really important in this game. Like against the Chiefs, Robbie Anderson has a really good matchup against probably Tre'Davious Ward, whereas DJ Moore probably sees a ton of Rashad Breeland, who has just been absolutely lights out this year. It must be the ganja. And Curtis Samuel, by the way, gets the Honey Badger this week. So 3rd toughest matchup for wide receivers in fantasy this season, but kind of like Jules alluded to, like you're not dropping these guys much lower than 20, and both these guys are top 16 in expert consensus ranking. So I don't know. Let's go to the Chiefs here. Let's try and go a little quicker, because Mahomes is hot, and Mahomes is arguably the number 1 overall player in a super flex league this week. And you speak of number 1s, you have Travis Kelce, who might be the most valuable player in fantasy football right now. Prove me wrong, children. Who after the season, we'll also be talking about a guy who's finished as the tight end 1 overall for half a decade straight, I think. But before we talk about these guys in this high-powered offense, Trav, do you by chance have the injury reports up for the Chiefs here?
Yeah, so like water is wet, Sammy Watkins is missing this week. He will not play this
In
week.
perpetuity.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no surprise there that Sammy Watkins, but this is actually a pretty clean game as far as injuries. Like, we got Christian McCaffrey coming back, obviously, and then for the Chiefs, Sammy Watkins, you're not missing a whole lot. And then the backfield looks like it's pretty good to go. So no, pretty clean for this one.
Nice. And I do know that Kansas City's a little banged up in the trenches. I can't remember. I think Mitchell Schwartz's back he needs a backiotomy there, and Frank Clark on the defensive side. Tyreek Hill, though, guys, you were definitely starting him confidently as a wide receiver 5 in ECR, DFS play always. But I did want to bring one thing up. Last week, he again came up shy of 100 yards receiving in week 8. But he scored twice, and if we include his rushing touchdown against the Raiders this season, that's 8 touchdowns in 8 games for Tyreek, but 0 games over 100 yards receiving this year. That's 14 straight games now for Tyreek Hill without hitting the century mark. So, Brian, are you worried about how touchdown dependent Tyreek Hill has been this year? Or, like, could he see a stretch of down games if the touchdowns go away down the stretch?
No, I'm not really worried about it right now. He is sort of what he is. He's a high variance player. You know, last year, he was a wide receiver 3 or lower in 50% of the games. You know, you know what you're getting with Tyreek Hill. Like you said, He hasn't hit over 100 yards yet this year, but he has that ability to really blow up a game. You know, he can get 80 yards on one pass. You know, he can give you those weeks where he can win you the week. I think he's still a wide receiver 1 going forward, but if you drafted him, I hope you drafted someone else that will give you that stability to take up for having Tyreek Hill in your lineup. You know, like one of our boys, Tyler Boyd, you know, both you and I were really high on coming into this season. You know, you got him late. He's going to take up the slack for those up and down weeks of the Tyreek Hill, you know?
That is all very perfectly put. I couldn't have put anything better myself. So, boys, who are we betting on in this backfield? I really thought Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be a stud fantasy running back this season, but Le'Veon Bell is here now. Much to my chagrin, much to my fantasy lineup chagrins. And we really have seen Lev cut into his workload. Like, he's running a ton of routes right now. And I'm not sure how much we want to take away from a New York Jets game against Kansas City, but both backs split down the middle, just 9 touches. But it is, you know, that's a game where Kansas City was able to do whatever they want. And it was against the Jets, who just released Lev. Maybe they gave Adam Gase's whipping boy a few extra touches, or maybe he is working into the offense, though, right? Is this a running back by committee? So, Jules, what do you think? Should we be worried about Clyde Edwards-Helaire going forward?
I don't think you have to be too worried about it. You got to temper expectations, but you know, if you drafted Clyde, you got to play him, right? Like the cost to get him was just, it was too high. There's the odds that you have somebody else you can just plug in instead, you know, or regulate them back to like a flex play where you can flip them in and out. I think it's pretty unlikely. So if I have Clyde, I'm plugging him into my lineup. I'm just tempering expectations, and hopefully I can put somebody in my flex who's going to be able to have a higher ceiling, and, you know, especially if I'm playing against a team that is projected to score a bunch of points or looks like they will.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you're just trying to offset it a little bit because we're not getting exactly what we thought we might. What do you think, D.Brown? Do you think he's like a back-end running back 1, or do you think he's going to fall into that running back 2 territory?
Unfortunately, I think he does kind of fall into that RB2 territory for me. You know, I was a big advocate for him coming into the season this year, but you know, Le'Veon Bell going to the Chiefs, if you invested in CEH and redraft, it hurt big time. You know, in Dynasty, while you thought you were getting that early scratch off ticket, you're going to have to be a little bit more patient. But in redraft, unfortunately, you didn't know ahead of time, and Bell is there, and it looks like he is going to siphon off a good bit of work. It's going to always kind of cap CEH's true upside week in and week out. You know, but Bell's a guy who hasn't been exactly consistent with his health as of late. So there's always the opportunity that he does go down for a week or two, and then you can really capitalize. But unfortunately, yeah, he's gonna stay in that RB2 territory for me moving forward, so long as Bell's healthy.
Yeah, no, I kind of see it like that a little bit. I don't know. I can't really make up my mind. I just think Andy Reid has rarely used multiple backs, and those rare seasons that he does are kind of the ones in which we don't get those top 10 fantasy running backs. I am happy that they play the Panthers, though, this week. They allow over 30 points to the position. In PPR, the third friendliest matchup for running backs in fantasy overall. Kansas City is favored big at home. So I think we probably end up walking away from this game with like a solid opinion on how this backfield plays out the rest of the season. But for this week, given the matchup and that Carolina has given up the most running back receptions this year, what do you think, Trav? Do you think we're squeezing Le'Veon Bell into our lineups this year, or are you still in wait and see mode there?
If I can be in wait and see mode, I am going to be in wait and see mode. Le'Veon did get the 3 targets last week, but I want to see it a little bit more because I do think Clyde is going to be getting the lion's share, even if it's not a huge gap between him and Le'Veon as far as workload. But I can tell you that I do have to put Le'Veon Bell into a couple of lineups this week. It's a little bit painful.
Against me too.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for reminding me of that. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I have to do it, and I honestly think that it could be worse, but I wish I had somebody better. So he's kind of in that middle ground of usable for me.
No, and that's kind of why I laugh, because you got bodies on bye, backs battling injuries. Like, he's the running back 23 in expert consensus ranking, so he's definitely in a lot of he's in a lot of lineups. So before we go to the next game, actually, Trav, you mentioned Sammy Watkins. We touched on Tyreek. I actually forgot to mention that the Panthers have allowed the 5th fewest touchdowns to the wide receiver position. They're the 6th toughest matchup in fantasy overall. Are we taking shots on any other wide receiver in Kansas City past Tyreek? Anybody looking for some hard man sexual flexual healing this week?
I'm pretty hard, man. I like Miko this week. I think with the Panthers being good at defending the wide receivers, I think Miko could get loose in a couple of spots, and it only takes a couple plays for him to throw up one of those big boom weeks. So, for instance, there's a couple of teams where I'm down from playing Devontae Adams on the Thursday nighter, and as opposed to going for somebody who's a little bit safer, like the only name that comes to mind right now is like an Adrian Peterson, somebody who's going to get like 10 to 15 carries.
Think of or think of Curtis Samuel, who is ranked right beside him in ECR. Yeah, so you're probably you'd be taking a shot on Hardman.
Absolutely.
Well, what about this one?
The offense.
You mentioned Le'Veon Bell. Would you rather flex Le'Veon Bell or Mecole Hardman in a flex spot?
That's a really close one, because I think Le'Veon's volume does come up a little bit, so it is almost like a floor versus ceiling play, and I think I'd probably go Mecole Hardman for where he sits on my roster, unless I was in a position where I had Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers and I had a big lead and I needed a little bit of safety. I might go for Le'Veon Bell, because I think his chances of putting up a zilcher are less than Mecole Hardman's, but just for the sexiness, I'd probably try and go Mecole if I could.
Yeah, and I definitely think Lev has some safety this week with playing the Panthers, who allow the most catches to running backs. And maybe we'll go out on this matchup saying that wide receivers might not be the play in this matchup altogether. Like,
hey, Ty, I got a quick question here from actually one of our viewers, that's pertinent for this game. So sorry to butt in there, but Kyle, our buddy Kyle, talking about the Chiefs, Gus Edwards or Demarcus Robinson. So this kind of goes a little bit further down that wide receiver depth chart of the Chiefs. Demarcus Robinson's hit a couple of times this season and pretty much has that ability any given week. So maybe let's just go around the horn real quick and just kind of drop one of the names here. Gus Edwards for that potential floor against tough matchup, or do we go Demarcus Robinson with that boom potential? Brian, start with you.
I'm going to go with Demarcus Robinson in that scenario. Indianapolis is really stout against giving up any sort of points towards the running backs, and at True North, we love the Dob Goblin. I think he's going to have the better touches in that game. I think with the PPR big play bonuses, I'm gonna shoot for the ceiling of Robinson.
I dig it. Rapid fire, Ty.
Yeah, I think I'll take Robinson for the same reasons, unless, like you said, you played Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams on Thursday night. But yeah, I think Demarcus Robinson playing a ton of snaps. This offense is one that you would bet on for the high variance. Give me Demarcus Robinson, I guess.
D.Brown.
Yeah, no, I'll take Robinson too, former Florida Gator. Let's go. What's up?
D.Brown going D-Rob. Julian, finish that one off.
Yeah, I lean that way too. You guys hit all the big points, especially with the big play bonus. That's I'm going to take the guy who makes big plays, not the guy who's a floor play, right?
Absolutely.
Totally.
Okay, Ty, sorry for the interruption there, brother.
No, and I was moving on, man. I just want to say that, wide receivers might not be the play altogether in this matchup, but obviously Mecole Hardman can make your week on one play, especially, or Demarcus Robinson could even make your week in one play against this defense. But I think all the running backs in this matchup could eat for sure, except Mike Davis, poor bastard. So on that note, guys, anybody playing the Seahawks this year, poor bastards. They play the Bills Mafia this week. So this is a pretty exciting game with shootout potential too, in a week with some very low point totals on the board, I might add. So the Seahawks go to Buffalo coming off a big win against the Patriots. It's a matchup between quarterbacks who just torched the league early on. Russ has obviously continued to cook for the most part. Josh Allen has certainly come back to earth over the last 4 weeks, but this is the game for him to get back on track. Seattle has been god-awful against quarterbacks, allowing almost 32 points per game, the number one matchup in fantasy football for quarterbacks. Even looking at Josh Allen's floor with his legs, Seattle has allowed the third most carries to quarterbacks and 4 rushing touchdowns, which is tied for the most allowed to quarterbacks in the NFL this year. On the other side, we have Russell Wilson, who's on pace for 5,000 yards, 60 touchdowns. I think he has a 10% touchdown rate right now. And check this out. Russ has played the Bills twice, a long time ago, granted, but he put up over 25 points in their most recent matchup. And in his only career game on the road against Buffalo, which this one is, Russ scored almost 40 fantasy points. So what do you think here, D.Brown? Are we looking at the quarterback 1 and 2 overall for week 9 in this matchup possibly? And do you think the over is the play? Someone hop in on that.
Yeah, I mean, I will take the over here. I think this is one of the higher over-unders on the week, if I'm not mistaken. And I like the Seahawks here over the Bills. Russ, like you said, it's just been unbelievable. Even with no run game, it doesn't matter this year. But between Metcalf and Lockett, Russ is going to cook one way or another. And I think Seahawks getting their defense a little bit healthy, coming back, right? Who they got coming back this week?
Jamal Adams.
Jamal Adams coming back this week. I think Buffalo, might have a little bit to bite off there. They tried to get the running game going a little bit more last week, so we'll see if that can continue. Seattle's been pretty good against the run. They've kind of been, their weakness has been the pass, but I think Seahawks are probably going to play a little bit more zone defense and try to force Josh Allen to be a little bit more accurate with the football and not let them get beat manned up. So Josh Allen's going to have a big test here, I think, this week, even being a home game. So I'm excited about it, though. Like I said, fire up Russ and his receiving options. And if you got DJ Dallas on the squad, I don't mind putting him in. Russ will put him in a position to be successful. We saw last week, even with kind of his efficiency not being great with the touches, he still got in the end zone. In the end zone. And like I said, with Russell Wilson chucking the ball out there, if you're getting touches in the Seattle backfield, they're going to prove to be beneficial.
Yeah, and they're going to be down at that goal line quite a bit. And so, yeah, you did mention it. It is the highest total on the board. I probably should have laid that out for you before asking that question. So it is a 55-point total. This is 2 fast-paced, heavy offenses, pass-heavy offenses, and both teams average around 70 plays per game. Both give up over 5.6 yards per play as well. And if you look at the spread, Buffalo is +3 at home. So Seahawks are just a 3-point favorite here. So I think it's interesting that Vegas does think that the Bills and Josh Allen will be able to keep up here. And you mentioned DJ Dallas. Let's get into him. Let's just dive into the gulls here and move right past Russell Wilson, because Carlos Hyde is out again, Trav. I'm going to steal your thunder here, and Chris Carson will be out for this game as well. So no Hyde, as always. No Chris Carson, who's a warrior. So DJ, turn up the volume, turn it up. In week 8, only Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook scored more fantasy points than DJD. Dalvin actually scored twice as many points as him. Point is running back 3 overall in week 8. I would point out what D.Brown pointed out, because nobody is saying that, his efficiency was just god awful. But he did score a receiving and rushing touchdown. So how high are we ranking DJ Dallas this week? What do you think, Brian?
I'd say he's a mid RB2 for me, but yeah, his efficiency last week, it wasn't very good, but that was up against the 49ers, who were number 27th, against giving up points to the running back position, and then this week, just trying to find where Buffalo is. They're number 11. Like that's a way better matchup. And like you said, Russ is going to move the ball. He's going to put them in positions to score. And I think DJ Dallas, he has the opportunity to score again and maybe even get better yards per carry. I think he's easily a mid RB2.
Yeah, totally. I really think like you can't rank them too high. Jules, I want to go to you. So actually, I'll touch on this. Like the Bills have been one of the best fantasy matchups for running backs over the past 4 weeks too, Brian. And they allowed the 5th most rushing yards to running backs this year, 8 rushing touchdowns to running backs. So Jules, if you have DJ Dallas, Damian Harris, who are you starting in that?
I'm going to throw DJ Dallas out there. I mean, I think the biggest point, you guys both said it, was, with Russell Wilson, they get into the red zone, right? And when you're getting valuable touches in the red zone on a high-powered offense, even when you have a low efficiency, you're going to score, right? And this guy, it was his first game, basically his first game in the NFL where he got meaningful touches. He's going to have some kinks to work out. I was a big believer of him coming into the draft, and I love the landing spot because, Pete Carroll's, he's done great things with late rounds and undrafted running backs, and I love the talent. So I think he can produce, especially in a high-powered offense. I'm throwing him out there. It's not really any shade at Damian Harris. I just think the upside is higher for DJ Dallas.
Totally, and that's why I do these. Go ahead, Trav.
I was going to say, anybody, speaking of late Pete Carroll favorite running backs, anybody worried about Alex Collins getting pulled up on the practice squad? PD Sunshine said he would not be afraid to use him, and I believe that.
I believe him.
He also said Philip Dorsett was going to be a key part of that offense this year. So.
Philip Dorsett got hurt.
Yeah, under the knife. Just went under the knife.
Or else he could have been in that David Moore role.
He could have. It's true. But
I digress.
I think those are great points, right? Because I wanted to bring up Travis Homer as well, because with all the bye weeks, with all the injuries, COVID and everything, is Travis Homer in anybody's lineup this week? Like I'm playing him over somebody like a Duke Johnson, probably.
Same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. DFS play for sure. He'll be cheap, and that's a guy he's got touchdown upside. We talk about being in that offense, right? We don't know who's going to get the red zone touches at this point, but it could go either way. I'll put my money on DJ and go.
And he played ahead of DJ Dallas before Travis Homer got injured. So I think it's interesting to see how this plays out, because DJ Dallas might have a short leash is all that's the only thing I worry about. And I think it's true that if, both of them suck, then Alex Collins is in there in the 3rd and 4th quarter. Why not? We know Pete Carroll does that. And I think what's interesting is you mentioned that we like Seattle backs. We like what Pete Carroll does. What really perked our ears up was not that he was a converted wide receiver from the U. None of these. It was that Pete Carroll and them went out and drafted him in the 3rd round. I think that surprised us all with DJ Dallas. Yeah. So I think that's interesting. Actually, speaking of draft capital, let's do one more. Leonard Fournette or DJ Dallas this week?
Whew. That's tough.
Give me DJ Dallas.
Leonard Fournette
is so locked into that
defense. I'll take Dallas.
Yeah. So it's pretty close, right? So it's he's really locked into that RB2. So you nailed it there, Bri. So I don't think we have to mention Lockett or DK. They're 2 wide receivers in the top 3, and without Calvin Ridley in the mix this week, basically the 2 highest scoring wide receivers in fantasy available in week 9 are Seahawks. But we should point out that Buffalo is a tough matchup, allowing the 5th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers this year. They haven't given up a touchdown to a wideout since week 5 to DK Metcalf's old running mate, A.J. Brown. So is anybody worried about Tre'Davious White? I mean, he can play all over the field. I'll ask you, Trav, who do you think Tre'Davious White covers in this game? Or does he kind of stay put and cover Lockett and Metcalf throughout the game?
Not entirely sure. I think they'll probably want to have him on DK and hope that they can cover Tyler Lockett with kind of more quantity as opposed to quality out of the slot. So I think he might follow DK, but you never really know because he can play everywhere. But I'm looking for him to be on DK, and I'm still not really worried about it. DK is a monster. Russell Wilson's going to be scrambling around there, finding him open. He's going to put up fantasy points. There's nothing worrying me about either Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf, even against trade day.
Yeah, and he hasn't been entirely the same as he has been in the past. Like, he's not as scary of a matchup as he kind of has been in the past. And I think this could be a Tyler Lockett week. That's actually what I wanted to mention, is that
Yes.
about 60% of his snaps come from the slot, and the Bills haven't given up a touchdown to a wide receiver since week 5 and all that. But 4 of their 6 touchdowns allowed to the position have come out of the slot. And I think you said it perfectly. Like, DK can transcend any matchup anyway. So I don't think we're too worried about them. By the way, Tyler Lockett and DK are the first wide receiver duo in NFL history to have over 500 yards receiving and 7 touchdowns through 7 games. Never been done by teammates.
Crazy.
Actually, with that, what do you guys think of David Moore? We mentioned Philip Dorsett going under the knife. Jules hates him. What do we think about David Moore?
Another dart throw that could have a big ceiling. Like, this guy can put up 2 touchdowns every week, right? I think you're not going to feel good about putting him in your roster just when you look at the volume that he's been getting consistently from week to week, or inconsistently, I guess. But again, it's just another guy who needs 1 or 2 shots to give you a viable flex week, in my opinion. So a little bit roster dependent, maybe matchup dependent, but I could see myself putting David Moore into a couple of lineups. I think I do have him in one where it's another deep league. So, YOLO. What do you guys think, though? I'm curious to see what you guys think, because it's an interesting one with DK and Tyler Lockett just being a mega funnel.
Yeah, no, I actually don't mind him as a dart throw flex play this week. All the stars are aligning. This kind of being a higher over under game, kind of maybe a projected shootout, and also one where Seattle's probably not going to really be able to lean on that run game at all, with DJ Dallas being starting running back. So look for us to be pass heavy in this game. And I think Moore's a fine flex play if you find yourself in desperation.
Okay, so I don't think we're starting tight ends in Seattle. I know Buffalo's given up a few good weeks to tight ends, but they're some of the more athletic tight ends in the league if you look at the players who actually accomplished that against Buffalo. So let's go to the other side where we're definitely not starting any tight ends. I think Dawson Knox is actually on the VID list, but
yep, you got that.
Is
right.
That's correct? And I wanted, do you know offhand anybody if Micah Hyde is out?
I don't recall seeing him, but let me just.
So that's definitely one to keep an eye on for Buffalo. I really like him, and he just kind of lets that defense do a lot more in pass coverage. So off the top, as we get into Buffalo, we mentioned that we could see the quarterback 1 overall and the quarterback 2 overall in this matchup. In other words, Josh Allen is clearly an elite fantasy option this week. I want to throw this out there, though. I think we might want to hit it and quit it with Josh Allen this week. I'm shocked that this isn't being talked about more. And I know last week we had to battle with weather a bit, but check this out. Josh Allen started the season with 25 fantasy points in 4 straight games, which was tied for the 3rd longest streak in fantasy football in NFL history. He hasn't scored 17 points in any of the 4 games since. So are people slow to react here, or is he still a top 5 quarterback going forward? What do you think, Jules?
I think it comes with those big plays, right? If those hit, then I think he's still up there. His rushing ability gives him a safe enough floor that he's definitely in the top 10 conversation for me regardless. But whether he finishes top 5 or not is going to be on whether they can hit those big plays. John Brown's coming back this week, and we'll see what that can do for the offense. You got two weapons there that he can use, and Cole Beasley as well, right?
Easy.
Yeah, no, there's actually a lot of fantasy relevance on that offense, and I think that opens up the defense as well when you've got a guy who can go deep and get open like Smokey can. So
yeah, and
just to lay out that schedule real quick there, Ty. Arizona is after Seattle, bye week. Chargers, Niners, Pittsburgh, Denver, New England. So there's a tough little stretch in there. So that's a tough schedule. So I like what you were saying about hitting them and quitting them.
I also think you just think of the names. Like, it's not so much the condemnation of Josh Allen. It's just you got Mahomes, Wilson, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, Lamar still got to be in that conversation. Justin Herbert is fucking in that conversation for me. Aaron Rodgers is there. Like, I just think it's the names around him more than anything. But for this week, I mean, I mentioned part of the reason Seattle is such a nice matchup. They're giving up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks this year. And they've allowed 4 rushing touchdowns. So I think a rushing touchdown is not an unrealistic ask from Josh Allen this week. If that was to happen, that's another touchdown these running backs aren't scoring at the goal line in Buffalo. And the problem we have with this backfield, like all these kind of backfields, is that two running backs, they're in that running back 2 range. You know what I mean? They're running back 20 to 30 range. And we have that with Zach Moss and Devin Singletary here. So what I'm saying is we really can only choose one of these guys. Like ideally, we have lineups where we can only choose one of these players for our lineup. So I want to go around the horn really quick. It's your flex spot, your running back 2 spot. This week and rest of the season, do you have Devin Singletary or do you have Zach Moss?
Give me Moss by a little bit. I think he's going to continue to get some red zone carries and get the touchdown looks. I can speak from experience from having Devin Singletary on a key home league roster tie that he has been mega disappointing. Yeah, it's been rough sledding for Singletary. So let me get the new hotness in Zach Moss. But yeah, interested to see what you guys have to say. Brian, what are you thinking?
Give me Moss as well. I'll just keep it short.
D.Brown.
Ty, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll take Moss between the receiving work that he's getting and the goal line carries. Those are the two things that I'm looking for with the running back, and Moss seems to be the better bet to receive those opportunities. So Moss over Singletary rest of the season.
You too, Jules?
Yeah, man. You guys, I don't need to say anything. You said everything I was going to say.
And Trav, like you said it right away, Trav. It's the high leverage work, right? Like he's getting, he's going to get the goal line carries. I know Singletary's seeing more receiving work right now.
Josh Allen's going to get the goal line carries.
Good point.
Exactly. I'm pretty sure neither running back has more than 35% of the team's carries on the season inside the 10-yard line right now. Like it's crazy.
Well, I think that's reflected too in the rest of season ECR on Fantasy Pros too. You look at Devin Singletary, he's at 36. Zach Moss is at 38. So not quite where we were in our, saying that we definitely go for Moss, but I think it's close enough. And just being outside the top 30 shows that Josh Allen is a problem for running back production there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was kind of my overall point, Trav, is that even this week you look in ECR, Moss is RB 25 in expert consensus ranking, Singletary's the RB 30, and like the takeaway is go get whichever one you want, send an offer for them in your fantasy league as trade deadlines approach, but sell the one you want to somebody who likes them more is kind of my opinion, because really it just isn't a great
them up and ship them off.
Yeah, like it's just not a great fantasy situation. Neither guy is scoring 11 fantasy points per game in PPR, which is less than Cole Beasley, by the way, but
top 24 Beasley.
Yeah,
he won me a championship last year.
Yeah, exactly. And he's been the guy eats in the red zone. Like he always just cuts into work, and he's been hot. Maybe we'll actually get into him here, but I just think for
and
the
he
running
spits
backs,
mad rhymes.
Yeah, and he can slam dunk. So
what?
He dunk? That's crazy.
Apparently he can dunk.
Jeez.
I'm like 90% sure now. I'm
no
like
trampoline.
myself, seriously.
Yeah, guys, I can dunk too.
Yeah, maybe it was maybe it was slam ball
as well.
I bet Ryan can dunk if he had better.
I can dunk. So yeah, it could be a hot hand approach, and definitely Moss is the guy who could be the more well-rounded guy if it does shift to just one guy. So we shall see if because the big takeaway that we're all pointing to is that there's going to be low goal line work, and the running back market share is suppressed in a Josh Allen offense as well. So I want to know if that holds true against Seattle, because teams are throwing a lot against Seattle, of course, and that's helping running backs in PPR leagues playing the Seahawks. They're actually the 13th best matchup in PPR for running backs. But yeah, it's just not how Singletary or Moss win in this offense. But the Seahawks are one of a handful of teams who have allowed over 50 catches and 300 receiving yards to the running back position. They're just getting carved up in the passing game. It's crazy. The Seahawks are the best matchup for wide receivers in fantasy as well. And that one is not even close. They've allowed over 27 more catches than any other team to the wide receivers, over 200 receiving yards more allowed against wide receivers than any other squad this year. Wide receivers have scored 11 times against Seattle. So Stephon Diggs, do we think he's an elite option this week? Is everyone sold on that?
Giddy up.
Giddy up. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting. I mean, Seahawks have surrendered over 160 more air yards than anybody else as well, but he has never scored against the Seahawks. He has some pretty suspect historical data against them. And I just think I guess we have to worry more about these other wide receivers. Like Cole Beasley quietly has 9 PPR points in every game, except the last week against New England. But last week was John Brown's first game back. So Are we starting Cole Beasley? Actually, I'll go to D.Brown is pouring a drink, so let's go to Brian. Are you starting Cole Beasley, and do you want Cole Beasley over John Brown going forward?
I don't know. I think they're close. I think it depends on what you need. I think if you need a higher ceiling, I think you're going to go with Smokey in this situation, especially against the Seahawks. But if you're just looking for that safe PPR play, it's Beasley is you can plug him in there and know what you're getting. You're not getting a high ceiling. He doesn't score that many touchdowns, although he has got some on the year, but he's just that safe play.
Trav, what do you think? Do you want Smokey or do you want John Brown? Do you want Smokey or do you want Cole Beasley rest of the season?
You know how much I love Smokey B. Ty, but I want Cole Beasley
Give him
for
the
the rest of
smoke.
the season. He has saved me from a couple of bipocalypses on a specific team, and he's just giving you those consistent, at least, Ty, I think you said he scored at least 9.5 per game. That's exactly what I was going to say. He gives you at least those 10 points per game, where John Brown has given you more stinkers than he's given you, good games this week. Or this year. So I'm going to go Beasley for the rest of the season, just for that consistency as a safety net and a red zone weapon.
Yeah, and what I think's funny is I didn't even want to bring these guys up, but I mentioned that Russell Wilson has just destroyed the Bills in his career. Josh Allen has never played the Seahawks, but these wide receivers sure have. And in 14 combined games from Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, and former Cardinal John Brown, they have scored a grand total of 0 touchdowns in those 14 games. I know this Seattle defense is literally like 10 times worse than it was in most of that sample, but I thought that was neat. So, anybody have any final thoughts on the Seahawks game before we move on?
No. It's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah, it really is. All right, so the next game, this one's going to be a fun one. This one's going to be a really fun one. Let me just get a little more comfortable here. So the next game is the New Orleans Saints at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a big divisional game. 2 quarterbacks battling it out for the all-time NFL passing touchdown record, boys. And we will also see some big wide receivers hitting the field for the first time in a while in this one. Let me get this out of the way for the degenerates. I think it's something that Tampa Bay is getting 4.5 points in this game. They opened as 5.5-point favorites at home. They certainly have a lot of steam right now as a football team, the Buccaneers. I like the Bucs in this one for sure. But the Saints are 5-2, and by the way, they're 2-5 against the spread this year. The Bucs sitting at 6-2. They're only 500 against the spread, so neither team has been very friendly to us degenerates this year. Tampa Bay kind of have all the pressure on them in this one, though, I feel. The Buccaneers factoring into that is the Saints have won 4 straight games against Tampa Bay, including the season opener this year. So do you guys, I want a quick game pick from you guys with the points. D-Brown, do you think Tampa Bay deserves that many points against the Saints here?
Yeah, I do. I mean, between how Tampa Bay's defense has been playing, Brady, kind of chucking the ball around and whatnot, but the Saints really haven't looked like the dominant team that we remembered from last year. The turmoil with Michael Thomas and they've been kind of giving Kamara a big load as of late while Thomas is dealing with his issues. But I think the Bucs are going to take the W here. The Saints get hot here and there, but I think Tampa's defense has really stepped up a lot this year, and to boot with Tampa Bay's offense, I'm excited to see what AB is going to do in this offense. Tom Brady's got probably some of the best weapons around him that he's ever had in his career right now, and so I'm excited. I'm excited to see this one. This is probably one of the better games I think we'll see. Just 2 veteran quarterbacks really kind of playing a game of chess here on offense. And if you enjoy good quarterback play, I think this is going to be one to tune in for sure.
Totally. And I think you said what's going to be a big theme in this one, that Tampa Bay's defense has improved this year. I think it takes a while for some people to adjust to that. That's really the truth this year. Trav, I'll get to you with injuries here really quick in a sec. I just want to get some degenerate stuff out of the way here, though. What else stands out to me in this game is that over-under 51.5. Like, it's going to be a mix of great quarterbacks against great defenses. These are 2 of the best defenses in football, although lending to the spread, I think, like Tampa Bay being favorites, is that the Saints have not been the same team this year against the pass. And on offense, yeah, like you mentioned, it's been the Alvin Kamara show, and he gets one of the toughest run defenses in the NFL, arguably for 2 years running now. The Bucs have been the best run defense. The note inside of that, by the way, though, is that the Bucs have allowed a lot of receiving production to running backs, and Alvin Kamara, scored a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown against the Bucs in week 1. What I can't get a good grip on, though, is in that first matchup, D.Brown kind of alluded to him thinking that these quarterbacks will be battling out in a chess match, but there really wasn't a ton of passing in the first matchup. Everyone is expecting a good game here. What do you think, Trav? Do you think how do you think this game plays out? Do you think the over is the play? Do you think it'll be a high-scoring affair?
This one totally could go both ways. These are those ones where you look at it and both defenses are good run defenses and you expect them to go through the air and you expect points, but it just disappoints because it's like a 14-7 game or some silly score like that. But I think there will be some points put up. So I would go with maybe just like a smidgen at the over, just because of all the people that the Saints are getting back. But yeah, this could go either way. We could be ready for a big disappointment if we are going with the fact that we think they're going to be scoring a lot of points.
So why don't you just get into those injuries then?
Yeah,
that you just
totally.
alluded to. Maybe save the Buccaneers for me, though, because I want to do a little Antonio Brown party.
Totally, man. Yeah, I'll just do the Tony's toe tapping tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, so just DJ Liquid, MC Solar,
DJ Dallas.
Real quick, I do want to give a shout out to my nephew Bryden. He's watching. Little football player. He's a solid defensive lineman out there. He's 9 years old for the Victoria Spartans. Thanks.
Who's
for
Bryden's favorite team?
Yeah, lay the wood.
We haven't dove super far into the fandom just yet. I think we both know where I'm going to steer him towards, but I think outside forces are probably going to steer him towards the Seahawks, so I'll probably end up losing that battle. His last name is Wilson as well, so he has a Russell Wilson jersey. So yeah, that's what's going on, B? Thanks for watching, buddy. So just to get into the Saints injury report there, Drew Brees actually was a full participant on Thursday and Friday, so he's not going to miss. But it was a little sketchy there. Ty, we were talking earlier in the week and talking about how salivating the Jameis Winston revenge game would have been if Drew Brees didn't play. But unfortunately, we're not going to see that. Alvin Kamara popped up limited on Wednesday with a foot injury, but he was also a full participant, so no worries there. The big one, though, Michael Thomas, out originally with an ankle and then popped up with a hammy as well, was limited all week, but it is said that he's going to be going, as well as Emmanuel Sanders, who just got finished with a bout of the Rona. So Emmanuel Sanders is coming off the reserve COVID-19 list, and he's going to be back as well. So yeah, Ty, I just kind of wanted to kind of throw in off that. And I guess, Julian, we'll start with you. What do you think, like, what are you reasonably expecting from Michael Thomas coming off those injuries, and maybe a little bit of turmoil within the locker room as well? What are you expecting from MT? Is he going to be that massive target hog, or is it going to be kind of spread out?
I think it's tough to say, but my gut leans they work him in slowly. They don't put him back in to the 100%, 99% snap share he had before. So I think it's fair to expect 7-8 receptions, or 7-8 targets, maybe 6 to 8 receptions, and and he can score on that, right? But he's always kind of been that the slant guy, short possession receiver, and so he made his money.
He doesn't like to hear that.
Yeah, don't tell him.
Is he listening?
Hope so.
Might crack you in the face.
That's okay. I'm all the way up here.
Yeah.
So I think they work him in a bit slower, and I'm still playing him because he's Michael Thomas and he has that upside. They could feature him, right? We thought Aaron Jones wasn't going to get very much run this week, and then he came out and he had the first 5 plays go to him. So I think it's possible that happens, but I err on the side of caution. Just temper your expectations when you're rolling Michael Thomas out.
Ty, you've been playing host admirably. Why don't you drop a little bit of heat on how you think Michael Thomas is going to come in there and affect the target share?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to come in and eat a lot of targets, 25 to 30% of them. There's no doubt. And I think Jules is onto something. Like, the market is hedging here, or people are legit worried about this matchup tomorrow. And it gets into what D.Brown was talking about. Like, he's the wide receiver 17 in expert consensus rankings right now. If we take out week 1 when he left early, that was against the Buccaneers. But take that out. This is Michael Thomas's fantasy points against the Bucs going backwards since 2018. 25 points, 41 points in the first matchup last season, 20.8 points, 38 points. And he's never scored under 15 fantasy points in his career against the Bucs, except week 1, which was the last time we saw him. So I think it gets into what D.Brown hinted at right off the top, and that's that we should probably just tip our cap to this Tampa Bay defense this year, to Carlton Davis this year, because just like against quarterbacks this year, Tampa Bay has just improved significantly across that span of sample size that I just gave since 2018 against wide receivers in fantasy. I mean, they're the 10th toughest fantasy matchup for wide receivers this year, and they were the worst matchup last year. They gave up over 40 fantasy points to wide receivers per game last year in 2019. So they've improved by about 10 PPR points per game against the position. Just a crazy swing, but I think the whole point that you go back to is that Michael Thomas is just a historically efficient guy, and he's an elite fantasy wide receiver that lets the Saints offense not be one-dimensional. And I think the tough matchup, it really just hurts Drew Brees and the other guys, Emmanuel Sanders, Jimbo's boy, Marquez Callaway, and Traquan is just super dead to us, I think.
That sucks. Poor one out for Traquan.
And I think
I was going to say, what about Jared Cook? Jared Cook's been having some big games the last couple of weeks. He gets lots of red zone targets as well. Do we think, D-Brown, do you think we can rely on Jared Cook as a wide receiver one? Or a tight end one, sorry. We are not relying on Jared Cook as a wide receiver one. But is he still a tight end one with Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders coming back and Alvin Kamara getting a shitload of targets?
I mean, with tight end being the way it is, I think you can throw him in there at the back end of a tight end one for me. I kind of do buy into the narrative though that MT being back, something just tells me that Drew's just going to pepper him with targets his first game back and just kind of silence kind of the crowd that's kind of been speaking about the Saints locker room. Nobody's really sure what's going on in there. We've heard rumors of this and Chauncey Gardner, getting into altercations apparently with
everybody
at this point. So,
he had
I don't really know
what
the morale is in that Saints locker room, but I kind of get that feeling that Breeze is just going to pepper Sir Slant a lot with targets this week. And so I don't mind. I think MT might be a good GPP play this week if you're in the DFS realm.
Does anyone else think like the wide receivers are the ones who came into this game questionable? I think Drew Brees is the one that's questionable, right, for this whole offense. Like, he's the one he's the one that we have skepticism about going forward, I think. Like, he's the quarterback 15 on the season, quarterback 16 in this matchup in ECR, but he had his worst game of the season in week 1 against Tampa Bay. And I just think the Bucs are good against quarterbacks. I think this is a really tough matchup. But if I'm totally in agreement with D-Brown, like, it's going to be a lot of Michael Thomas. And I think you mentioned the other name it's going to be a lot of, and that's Jared Cook. Like, he has tore up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers since joining the Saints. And don't look now, but he scored double-digit PPR points in 3 straight weeks. So I think those are the two plays in this game. And I think Emmanuel Sanders is just one of those guys who you can never predict anyway. So why try?
Truth.
So, okay, do you guys want to, let's go into Tampa Bay then, because Tom Brady on the other side has a couple huge weeks this season for fantasy. He's throwing deep, but just a 20-point game in week 1 against the Saints. I kind of alluded to both, like, the whole passing game was just kind of a letdown in week 1. He is impressing any way you look at it, though. We have to remember that he's still kind of getting his feet wet in this offense with Arians, and Brady has a couple games over 32 fantasy points already. So he's always in the conversation for quarterback 1 leagues. But I have a question, guys. Like, I think he's outscoring Lamar Jackson right now, Tom Brady. And we really have shifted our mentality at the quarterback position in fantasy in recent years. Like, there's such a premium placed on rushing at the position, and rightfully so, looking at Kyler, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, all these guys. Trav, what do you think? Like, is Tom Brady going to be one of those outliers this year who scores as a top 10 quarterback without adding value with his legs?
Yeah, I think everything is lining up for him to be. Just on the injury front for the Bucs, the Chris Godwin is back, so that is huge. We like that. Obviously, Tony Toe Tap, represent Ty, is in the lineup for the Bucks. So I think with the weapons that he's got, and Gronk even heating up and showing that red zone presence that we know that he can be, I think Tom Brady can be that outlier. Now I'm thinking back end top 10. I'm not thinking top 5 because he doesn't have that rushing. But him and Aaron Rodgers actually are the only two quarterbacks in the top 12, I believe, that don't have 200 yards rushing. And they were actually the only two last year to finish in the top 12 without 200 yards rushing. So I think, we can see them do that, but, I'm probably looking 8 to 12 as opposed to saying bona fide top 10, just because of what those other young guys with wheels can do.
Yeah, totally. And this is a great matchup for a guy like Tom Brady too, because his opponent is only the Falcons have allowed more passing touchdowns to quarterbacks. So Brady is primed in prime time here. And talking about the legs, actually, keep it in your pants here, boys. There's a pair of them in this running back room, and this is a pretty ambiguous situation here that we want to get right if the Bucks look to be one of the better teams in the NFL, right? So let's go around the horn fashion here. Rojo or Fournette, who are you plugging into your lineups? Because both are in that RB2 flex, range again, and there can be only one. And where in lineups, like, do you think they are top 24 running backs? So around the horn, who do you want? And top 24 over under?
Give me Lenny inside the top 24 with some receptions.
Yeah, I lean that way too. It's just he's the receiving back there, and in PPR the receptions kill. So
isn't that funny to say? Like Leonard Fournette is the receiving back.
Receiving that, it does. It sounds weird.
He was last year in Jacksonville though too.
Yeah,
with Leonard as well.
Just a lot.
Rojo's going to fumble and he's going to get taken out again.
For sure. It's awesome. I love seeing it, and that's kind of where I think I'm sitting. D.Brown, what are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna take Lenny as my standard. I think you could kind of guess at the game script, depending on who the matchup is, and if it seems like it's kind of going to be a rollover game, I don't mind plugging in Rojo over Lenny. But if it seems like it's going to be a competitive game in the slightest, give me Fournette, no doubt, for the receptions.
Yeah, so I'll take devil's advocate here. Like I kind of value them where they sit in fantasy right now. Like Jones is an RB2, but Fournette's more of an RB3 to me, who I hope scores in that game. I was surprised to see that I missed that. You know what I mean? Like that value shift. Leonard Fournette being ranked ahead of Ronald Jones this week in ECR just kind of threw me off. Like Fournette is ranked as the running back 19 in expert consensus ranking, running back 26 for Rojo. But we have to remember that this is a really tough matchup for running backs going against the Saints, still allowing the 6th fewest rushing yards to backs, just 3 rushing touchdowns to running backs all season. So that's what I mean. It kind of shapes up more like a Rojo game, in my opinion. But I totally agree with what Brian said, that Bruce Arians is one of those remaining coaches who cares about ball security, cares about pass protection. So we do have to factor that in for sure. You know what? The Saints defense, they haven't been the same against the pass. And if you thought the running back room was muddy in Tampa Bay, guys, get your fantasy gumboots on for this one, because let's hit these wide receivers really quick. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Antonio Brown. I was like, Antonio, the mighty Buckman, swear to God. So I think maybe I should preface this whole thing by saying we kind of want to just see a game with all 3 of these big giant names on the field at the same time. And to get it out of the way, we probably have to say goodbye to Scotty Miller time, which sucks. And maybe we see a dip in the targets going to the running back position. I want to make that in the universe as well. So let's do a quick value take for redraft for tomorrow night against the Saints. Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. Tell me where they are in value going forward.
Godwin, Evans, Brown for me. Brian, have at her though.
I don't know. They're so close together. I'm gonna have to go Godwin. I might put AB above Evans just because he's so touchdown dependent, though. But it's so hard to say because we haven't seen anything or how they're gonna use him or if he's gonna go crazy and only play one game. I don't know. You know?
Yeah. A distinct possibility. It sounds like he's living at Tom Brady's house, though. Brady's showing him how to act as a human being, let alone a professional athlete. Just looking really quick at the rest of season ECR from Fantasy Pros, just scrolling down here. The top wide receiver is Chris Godwin at 18. So this is rest of season, not just this week. Mike Evans at 28. And it's probably a bit of Antonio Brown at 37. So Antonio Brown's getting a little bit slept on, I think, at 37, because I think all these guys could probably be within the top 36 in this offense. I think somebody else is going to suffer, though. Ty, you mentioned the running back targets, and I think Gronk could potentially suffer aside from that red zone stuff. But I'm curious to hear what you think, buddy, with that Tony Toe Tap jersey on.
Well, I love Antonio Brown as a player, you know what I mean? And to be honest, I think this really hurts Mike Evans. I don't see how you could say it doesn't. You know, I barely think of Mike Evans as a wide receiver 3 all of a sudden with Antonio Brown there. So no joke. I guess I'm like straight up panic selling, I guess. But the reason is because I love Godwin so much. He's locked into ideal usage. He's so unbelievably versatile. So I won't be selling him. Mike Evans and AB might alternate big weeks in fantasy. I think that's the scare, right? Like they see similar usage, right? And AB might be better than Mike Evans in both categories that Mike Evans dominates in, like air yards, deep passing down the field, plus goal line and sideline catches. Like that's why we're calling him Tony Toe Tap, you know? And the worry for Big Mike is in games he doesn't score, what is he going to give you, right? Like what we've seen this year has been very upsetting. And those games when he doesn't score, they're going to be a lot more frequent with AB in town and with Godwin back in the fold, right? And I was surprised to see the ECRs as well, Trav. So going forward this week and going forward, I'm definitely high on AB. He's my second highest ranked guy named Antonio tomorrow. And actually, I think owners are starting, you know, because we're starting Mike Evans right now this week. We have to if we have him on our fantasy team. Same with Chris Godwin, to be honest. I'm probably just fired him right back in my wide receiver 2 slot. But Antonio is tricky. So why don't we rank the Browns here, boys? Odell Beckham's favorite pastime. So for this week, I'll go to you, Jules. For this week, Odell Beckham is not in this one, unfortunately. But what do you think about Hollywood versus little cousin going against the stingy Colts, Marquise Brown or Antonio Brown?
Antonio.
Yeah, I think I'm taking Antonio. Yeah, you know, I think back to the 1 week he played last year with Tom Brady, and he came out, he scored 2 touchdowns, lights out, right? I think, you know, he's living with them. I think he comes out, and I think he actually has a good week. And you know, it hurts me to say a little bit because, you know, I almost don't want him to do good because he's just such a freaking whack job, but he's so good. You know, like I got to give him credit where credit's due. So yeah, give me Antonio there. I think he beats Hollywood out this week.
What about Smokey Brown against the number 1 matchup for wide receivers? Yep. So you're going Antonio on that one too.
Yeah, I need another week to see Smokey in that offense.
Cool. And I love what you said there, Brian, about, you know, he could have just play one game, go crazy. Like you have to factor that into his long-term value, like rest of the season. Like it's so funny. If he doesn't work out, man, it's just sad. I mean, not everyone is a Marvin Harrison or a Larry Fitzgerald, you know, but if AB had the personality of a Hines Ward, like he finishes his career as the second best wide receiver of all time behind Jerry Rice, probably. And before AB ghosted in 2019, this is where he ranked in PPR points per game at the wide receiver position. First, second, first, second. He was over 300 PPR points 6 years straight, starting in 2013. And the wide receiver 1 overall 4 straight years in there. So I could just go on and on about him, but does anybody want to jump back in on the wide receivers? And somebody maybe hit me with this Gronk love, with these 3 wide receivers. You mentioned it, Trav. Can we justify this Gronk hype right now? He is the tight end 4 in ECR for tomorrow.
We got to be careful with it. I think we got to be careful with it. I could see him becoming extremely touchdown dependent because I don't think we're going to see 6 or 7 targets a game to Gronk consistently. We'll see it, you know, we'll see some spike weeks where that's concerned. And in Gronk fashion, there will be some Gronk spikes. But again, that just leads back to his dependency on the touchdown. So I'm tempering it a little bit. It sucks because he's been reliable the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and it's funny because he's been the tight end 2 overall over the last 4 weeks, but he was just invisible over the first 4 weeks. So yeah, it's so weird. And for this week, tight end 4 just seems super high. I mean, the Saints are the 6th easiest matchup for tight ends. They've allowed 6 touchdowns to position, but I mean, there's a pair of sophomore studs in great matchups. Like you have TJ Hawkinson ranked below him, Gronk, below Gronk, and he plays the Vikings with no Kenny G. Noah Fant is going against the Falcons. I think that's an interesting one. So let's start and try and rapid fire some of these ones. We're going to go across conference here, guys. And the next matchup, I'm going to stay with a division battle. Trav, I want you to just fire into some injury reports here for the Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers, if you got it in front of you.
Yeah, for those dynasty rookie drafters, Brian Edwards has missed the past 4 games. He was a full participant on Thursday and Friday, so it looks like Brian Edwards will be back in the fold with the Raiders. It'll be interesting to see with Nelson. It's weird with Nelson Aguilar surging. That feels wrong to say. He
just because you're an Eagles
fan.
Well, not just because I'm an Eagles fan, just because it's Nelson Aguilar and he's in that Vegas defense or offense. But Brian Edwards is back, and a lot of people had him as the alpha wide receiver to start the season in this offense. I think it's going to be a little bit of a slower go as he starts to factor in there, but I think just maybe a little bit of payoff for those of us who drafted him in like that second round or second, third turn of rookie drafts. Looking at the O-line, they're starting to get healthier as well as recovering from the reserve COVID list. I think they get 2 of those offensive linemen back. Sorry, I can't recall offhand exactly what the names are, but they're getting stronger, and they do have some good players there. And then kind of piggybacking off of that, we got Josh Jacobs. He was a full participant on Wednesday. Didn't practice Thursday and then limited on Friday with a knee and an illness, they were saying. So him practicing Friday was a good sign. He did have his best game of the year last week with 31 carries and his first 100-yard game of the season. So Josh Jacobs is the big one that I'm monitoring. I expect him to play, but I'm curious to see if there is somebody coming in to spell him coming off that injury. It's kind of a weird practice trajectory that he started with this week. What do you think, Ty? What do you guys think on the Josh Jacobs situation?
Yeah, like that is definitely something that scares us. The midweek downgrades. Yeah, we hate that. Yeah. Maybe I'll just let me fire through this matchup information really quick. The Raiders, they won both games last year between these two teams, but both were 1-score games, and Justin Herbkid obviously wasn't blowing the F up at that point. The Raiders have also become just a more offensive team themselves. They're getting healthy. You mentioned, Trav. So I think it's interesting. Maybe we throw historical matchup data out the window in this one, regardless of both coaches having some tenure here. With these teams this year, though, we have the Raiders above 500. They lost to the Patriots and the Bills before the big win against Kansas City. And they came out of their bye week and just got smoked by the Buccaneers. And last week, Derek Carr and co., they won a whirlwind of a game, 16-6 against the Browns. And they haven't been that good on offense when we think of this game having such a high total. I mean, the Raiders have scored under 24 points in 4 of the last 5 games. And my point here is the Chargers are sizzling. Sure, they have just 2 wins on the season, but they lost to Denver by 1, lost to the Saints by 3, and that was an overtime game against the Saints. And in week 4, they lost in a shootout to the Buccaneers, who, remember, Derek Carr couldn't hang with coming off of his bye week. And keeping those scoring trends going, the Chargers have scored 27 points in 4 straight games now. In those last 4 games for the Chargers, the average game total has been almost 64 points. So this one is a 52-point total. I'll go to you, D.Brown. Do you think the over is the play, or do you worry about the ball being in Carr's court too much for that? And maybe give me a game pick too. This is a pick 'em game, boys.
I'm gonna ride the Herbert wave this week. He's looked great so far. I think this is another matchup in which he can shine. Justin Jackson is another guy in this game that I'm kind of targeting in DFS. He's under 5K on DraftKings, and last week I feel like he really kind of set himself apart in this backfield. He's looked pretty good. Seems to be getting a lot of the receiving work and a lot of work on the ground. So give me the Chargers here. I like them. Josh Jacobs a little beat up. I think Derek Carr is going to be under pressure often from this Chargers defense, and I'm not really big on any of the Raiders receivers this week. I'd like to see Brian Edwards come back, see kind of what he can do and how he can get incorporated in this offense. But I kind of want to see how these targets shake out, especially with Josh Jacobs being banged up. I think he is going to go this week. But coming off the big game last week, lots of touches. It'll be interesting to see how the Raiders can get maybe Booker involved a little bit more, try and get a little bit of the load off of Jacobs.
Don't even say it. Don't even say it. But yeah, I totally agree. We forget about that a lot. You think of someone like Dalvin Cook, who's coming off this great game, and the realistic assumption is that they actually might rest him a little bit in the upcoming week, or at least he might be a little more banged up that following week. So I think you said everything. I agree with everything you said there, especially that it really just is in Derek Carr's court. So what do you think, Jules? Do you think Derek Carr, like there's room for a shootout here is my point with that over under. Both teams are giving up over 250 yards passing per game right now. Vegas is scoring about 27 points per game, and the Chargers are really just elevating their points per game week after week. Plus teams are scoring over 26 points per game on both of these defenses. So are you going after the over? And give me a game pick, Jules.
Yeah, I am. I think this is it's a pretty safe over for me, actually. And I'm taking the Chargers in this one. I think you alluded to it earlier. They've had 3 games where they were within 3 points of winning that game. They lost last week on the last play of the game. So, I think one of these games goes their way down the stretch here. They've been a great team, just haven't been able to pick up wins. And in the NFL, you got to learn how to win with a young team like this. So, I think this is a good opportunity, a good challenge, and Gruden's not going to give it to them easy. So it'll be a fun one.
Yeah, and isn't that funny? Like the Chargers have never finished games, that's for sure. Whether it's their kicker, whatever it is, just that is something. Death taxes and the Chargers losing late games, and your poor goddamn Falcons. Sorry, D.Browner. Yeah, sorry, dude. I
knew it was going there. I fucking knew it.
They're almost taking the crown there in that aspect. It's crazy. It's always been the Chargers in my life. Are you taking the Chargers too, Brian?
Yeah, I'm taking the Chargers as well. For all the reasons that Jules and everybody else laid out. Herb Kidd's showing real good. He's got his weapons. He's got Keenan that he's going to really a lot during the games. And like Dee said, Justin Jackson's looked good. I hope it's a shootout because I have to stream Carr in one of my leagues this year or this week. But I'm taking the over and the Chargers to win here.
Me too. So I laid all that in. I think the Chargers have been kind of the hidden gem this year. They're 5-2 against the spread. I want to go into Derek Carr. Let's start with the Raiders here. We were kind of talking about how we don't have a lot of interest in the wide receiver group here. Maybe we'll get into that. But, Brian, if you're starting him as you're streaming Derek Carr, it could go either way, I think. I don't know. It might be a trap play in this one. I mean, he could have a couple touchdowns, decent chunk yards, but it's going to be tough for him. Hopefully he hits 15 fantasy points because he hasn't done so in 3 of the past 4 games against the Chargers. I think he's a fine quarterback to play, but when people see that quarterbacks are scoring the 4th most fantasy points against the Chargers, I just think Derek Carr might get a little bit overranked. And I'm not holding week 8 against Carr whatsoever. It was super windy in Cleveland last week. I think what we should keep in mind before folks think the Raiders are going super run heavy, by the way, especially with Josh Jacobs' status, like the Raiders ran the ball 45 times, I think, against the Browns, but that was just because of the conditions. And, maybe we should talk about Josh Jacobs a little bit, just in the aspect, like, what do you think, Trav? You're back. Are you comfortable if Josh Jacobs is your running back 1 on your fantasy team going forward?
Yeah, if he proves healthy this week for sure. I think where you took him in drafts, he probably is. I know there is one team where I am relying on him as the running back 1. So, I think you kind of have to if he proves to be healthy this week. But I am a little bit sketched about this week because it could be a little bit of a trap game, like you were saying about Derek Carr there. He's probably back end, maybe top 15 for this week, but I think moving forward, he's top 12. Still needs to get some more of those targets though. And he needs to break more big plays as well, because he hasn't been breaking the big plays as much as he has last week. You look at PFF's breakaway percentage, and 32% of his yardage was on big plays last year, whereas it's only 6% this year. So I think there's some room for some positive regression for him in that department, even if we don't see more targets. And I think we could see that get him into that back end top 12.
I think that's perfect. And I think he has the lowest yards per carry of any top 30 running back in fantasy this year. And remember, his 4.8 yards per carry in his rookie season, that was the sell. The efficiency was always the sell for Josh Jacobs, always the draw, the big plays, the yards after contact. So yeah, that's really interesting because, and you mentioned that he's outside the top 20 running backs in targets and receptions. I think it's a really interesting conversation, but because at the same time, like, do you want him over Jonathan Taylor? Do you want him over Chris Carson? Probably. And then you get to Joe Mixon, Kareem Hunt, and these guys. So it's tough sledding out there. So Jacobs is probably going to be a top 12 running back going forward. But yeah, he's only finished as a top 12 running back twice this year. And I should point out that in his only career game against the Chargers, he did score 19 points in PPR. So he's in line for a good week, as long as he's not limited and all that stuff that we're talking about. By the way, the Chargers have allowed just 2 rushing touchdowns to running backs this year. That's tied for the fewest in the NFL. Meanwhile, running backs are winning via receiving work, which is what he is not winning. So you mentioned Devontae Booker. If, like, say Josh Jacobs was to be, aggravate something in pregame workout or whatever, are we starting Devontae Booker over Jalen Richard in like a running back 3 spot in that case, D-Brown?
Yeah, no. If Jacobs were to miss, I think Booker would be in play over Richard. I think he's going to see the bulk of the carries at that rate, and he's shown himself as a capable receiver out of the backfield as well. So I'd feel confident firing him up if Jacobs was out as a kind of high end RB3 type player. But getting back to Herbert, I'm partaking in a 2021 Superflex Dynasty mock draft right now with some other guys in the industry. I'd just like to point out that Justin Herbert went at 207 ahead.
Oh my God.
Ahead of the likes of Joe Burrow at 210. So just kind of throwing you into where his value is going as of right now. He's up there pretty high. He was selected just behind Dak Prescott, who went at 202 as the QB7. So Herbert is on the rise. He's looked spectacular, and if you got him this past offseason and rookie drafts, congratulations, because he is straight cash now. I mean, guys you couldn't throw out a good enough offer right now. Trying to buy him in Dynasty is like trying to buy DK Metcalf in Dynasty. It is tough sledding right now, boys.
So
roll up that herb.
Let's herb a derb here. Let's grab a scoop of rainbow, Herbert.
Okay.
If like, I think Joe Burrow is a good one. Like, I think he just soared right past Joe Burrow, even in redraft value, man. Like, I want him in redraft over Joe Burrow easily. Trav, do you want him over Carson Wentz?
Ooh, by a hair.
Heartstring.
Yeah.
Easily for me. Matt Ryan?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
These are like
Sorry,
pretty
D.
easy for me. So these are like, he's a pretty locked in top 10 quarterback going forward.
Good schedule.
Absolutely.
Check this out. This week, he's the quarterback 6 in expert consensus ranking versus Vegas, which is a pretty tough matchup versus quarterbacks. They're actually a running back funnel. Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Kyler, and Josh Allen are the only quarterbacks ranked ahead of him. So there is not many guys people want ahead of the Herb Derb, because like, he just has those 2 elements that give us that rare advantage at the quarterback position: the deep passing in concert with that rushing upside. Now, I mentioned on the Go District, so sorry if this is repeat information, 4 touchdown passes of 50 plus yards already this year for Herbert. That leads the NFL. Last year, the NFL leader in 50 plus yard touchdown passes had 4 all year. And he leads with 9 touchdowns on throws 20 plus yards downfield as well. We also mentioned like a couple weeks back that he had that rushing upside to fall back on. He now has 140 yards, a pair of rushing touchdowns under his belt, and he will always have that athleticism to fall back on. Guys over 20 fantasy points in 5 to 6 games too. So I wanted to wax poetic a bit there, because the whole team has just transformed throughout the year. They have come out of their bye week as a totally pass-heavy team, especially on early downs. It's just incredible what the Chargers are doing. Brian, before you can get your bearings, how are we approaching this backfield right now that itself is in flux, block party style? Like, it's also a great matchup on paper this week, but how are you dealing with this backfield? Because D.Brown already hinted at how he's feeling it, and I'm with him. What do you think of Brian?
With LA's backfield?
Yeah, so are you liking Justin Jackson, or are you still dipping your toes in the Joshua Kelly
Jackson?
Pool? Yeah, how high are you? Like top 24?
Yeah, I think I'm going to be top 24 on Justin Jackson. You know, he's looking good. Like if you're actually watching the games, he looks like he has more burst than Joshua Kelly. And it like you said, Vegas is giving up a lot of yards and stuff to the running backs. I'd say he's a top end RB2 in this matchup.
Boom. So we are all go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, just real quick on that. Justin Jackson did have a top 12 week last week, and that was with Troy Maine Pope, who is doubtful this week with a concussion. Troy Maine Pope soaked up 10 carries and 7 targets last week. So I think you're spot on with that, Brian, that Justin Jackson is a boon to fantasy managers because you got him at a price where this production is just a bonus for you, and he's going to be a running back 2 for your roster this week, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to throw to you with, Trav, is that Tremaine Pope is doubtful with a concussion, you said?
Yeah, doubtful, yeah, with a concussion.
Well, that's interesting. Like, the Chargers running backs, nobody's played 60% snaps in any game this year except Austin Eckler. So I think that's interesting. I wonder if that changes this week for Justin Jackson because of Tremaine Pope's status. I almost think, by the way, that Joshua Kelly can probably be dropped. He was out-snapped by Tremaine Pope last week. And do you guys know how many games Joshua Kelly has been a top 24 running back in fantasy this year?
Gooser?
1.
Boop, 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 boop.
Mm.
Unless
No.
Rev is wrong, that's a big fat 0. And you mentioned, that's something that Justin Jackson's done 2 of the last 3 games. By the way, Kelly has double-digit touches in 4 of the last 5 games. He's just under 6 fantasy points in 4 of those last 5 games. Like, if his work goes elsewhere, we could see an uptick in efficiency if, Brian, D.Brown, Jules, or Travis is getting those carries, in my opinion. And it's because the efficiency just has been pretty bad. Like, I ragged on Josh Jacobs, guys, because on the other side, Trav, you mentioned the breakaway percentage. He's light years ahead of Kelly, Josh Jacobs in talent, obviously. But check this out. Only 3 running backs have under 70 touches right now, but under 4 yards per touch, and 2 are in this game. 2 are named Josh, and the third guy in this equation is actually the punchline. So it's Jacobs, Josh Kelly, and Frank Gore.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Troy Maine Pope was getting so much work is because Josh Kelly has been super inefficient, which sucks because we still love him. He is he doesn't know it, but he's a friend of True North. But carry on with that backfield tie.
Well, I could get back on track here, I guess, like looking towards tomorrow because it is a great matchup against Vegas. And I also spoke of the inconvenient devil there. Another reason we should really, really love Justin Jackson, the only player in the NFL without a touchdown who has more touches than Justin Jackson this year, is Frank Gore of the Jets. So I think Jackson is a rock solid RB2 this week, no doubt. And the theme is that he's gaining steam quickly while kind of running backs behind him are not. He had 20 touches last week, 20 touches in 2 of the last 3 games, actually. He has 40 PPR points across that stretch as well, double-digit PPR points in 3 weeks straight. No touchdown yet on the season. So I think that's coming. Running backs have scored 9 touchdowns against the Raiders this year. And if we worry about Herbert, throwing constantly in this game, the Raiders are also giving up a lot of receiving production to the running back position. And that's what I've always been most thrilled about when it comes to Justin Jackson. And this year, he's seen 11% of the targets when healthy, at least 5 targets in the last 3 games for my boy there. So does anybody know when Austin Eckler is set to return?
Not soon.
Whenever it is, it's going to be later.
Yeah.
So maybe we should be buying Justin Jackson going forward then. Should we hit Keenan Allen? I mean, he's a top 15 guy in PPR right now. Lots of room for him to even move up. He's top 5 comfortably in targets, receptions. 13 wide receivers have more receiving yards, and he has just 3 touchdowns on the year. So lots of room for him to move up. Actually, Keenan Allen's touchdown line over the last 3 years is the number of the beast here, 666. And if he doesn't score tomorrow, that'll be the 8th game. He'll be on pace for a cool 6 touchdowns. It's funny that I doubted Keenan Allen in the red zone heading into the season. Like, I just continue to keep assuming Hunter Henry and Mike Williams will dominate the end zone looks. But again, this season, Keenan Allen, 6 end zone targets. Mike Williams has 5. Hunter Henry has 4. All 3 of Keenan Allen's scores have come in the end zone this season as well. So with scoring on the brain, Beavis and Butthead style, what are we thinking about Mike Williams? Like, he has a handful of duds this season, but also 2 huge fantasy games in the last 3 weeks, 3 touchdowns in the past 3 weeks. Jules, are you happy starting Mike Williams? Is he like a wide receiver 3, or is he more of a good option among these high upside plays that once we're beyond that range?
Yeah, I think he's got a wide receiver 3 floor, or he's getting those targets now, but I think he does offer that upside. And, I'm rolling him out there in if I'm playing 2 flex leagues or 3 wide receiver leagues, I probably have him in my lineup because the upside's there. We talked about this game being a high scoring game, and I think that comes to fruition, and it's not all on Keenan. Also, he popped up today with an illness on the injury report. I don't know if you guys saw that. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure what that's going to affect his Sunday availability like, or if that's going to affect him at all, but something to monitor for sure with Mike Williams.
I think he's the wide receiver 2, back end wide receiver 2, potentially in, like you said, what could be a game where they score. In 2 of the last 3 games, he's got 8 targets, 5 receptions in both. One of them, he got 109 and 2 touchdowns. One of them, he got 99 and 1. So I think the chemistry with Justin Herbert's just starting to heat up. That's kind of what I thought at the beginning of the season, and why I wasn't as hyped on Keenan Allen is because I thought Mike Williams plays really well into the skill set of Justin Herbert, with him throwing those frozen rope deep balls. And we saw that last week with a beauty touchdown catch to Mike Williams. So I think some of that could continue, where Mike Williams could be that boomer bust, big play threat who could give you big touchdowns when you need. So I'm liking him as somebody in those start 3 wide receiver leagues who can give you wide receiver 2 production in the wide receiver 3 spot.
Yeah, that's well said. I think I have kind of a hot take here. Like, Mike Williams has played a bunch of games against the Raiders, obviously playing in division. He's never hit 60 yards in a game against them. 0 touchdowns against the Raiders in his career, who suck. It's really weird. So maybe this isn't the Mike week. I don't know. But going forward, I love Mike. I mean, I think of Jalen Guyton having multiple touchdown catches of 70 plus yards this season, and all the end zone targets that I'm kind of referring to, is work that can kind of flow towards Mike Williams. Actually, I'm going to move on here. I remember 2016, guys. Remember that year? So Hunter Henry was a machine in the red zone that year. That's what I remember, in the end zone too. So he feels like kind of the forgotten man in fantasy football this week to me. He's ranked as the tight end 7 in ECR. We talked about Gronkowski against TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant in that range. Brian, what do you think? Do we agree that Hunter Henry should be ranked below guys like Gronk, TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, just because they have better matchups?
Yeah, I think so. Like, when you look at Gronkowski, Brady's got eyes for him. Fant's in a really plus matchup against Atlanta. But, I mean, Hunter Henry, he still has a plus matchup going in against Las Vegas against Corey Littleton. And he always has that touchdown upside. They're going to be throwing it. They're going to be in the red zone. And like you said, he is that big-bodied red zone presence. He could score. And I think that's why he's in the top 10. The expert consensus ranking is the plus matchup and the possibility that he could come down with a touchdown there or 2.
Totally. And yeah, they're all those guys are just in really good spots. I agree. And Henry's just not in a plus matchup, even though Hunter Henry, the reason Mike Williams sucks against the Raiders is because Hunter Henry has scored more times against the Raiders than he has against any other team in his career, including Kansas City, who he has 2 more games played against, and another team he's played more than he has played against, is actually the Denver Broncos. And let's go to them. They have Georgia on the mind in the next matchup, going up against D.Brown's Falcons this week. And this game is in the Dome, and we could see some offense in this game too. So, Trav, do you have any injury information for me in this game here for the Atlanta Falcons and the Denver Broncos?
I do. Let me have a peek where...
Well, I'll come back to you. So Drew Lock came back to life finally, guys, right? Like, he just sucks. We all hate Drew Lock, but his second half against the Chargers was better than the rest of the season combined, kind of. And this is an elite fantasy matchup for quarterbacks going against Atlanta. Don't have to tell D.Brown that. Then you have Matt Ryan and the Falcons coming off of a win, even though, Matt Ryan's kind of let down for fantasy this year. The Broncos are also a very nice get-right matchup for quarterbacks. The total in this game is kind of a toughie. 50 even is what Vegas thinks the combined point totals for the Falcons and Broncos will be. I don't think the over is like enticing enough in this one. The teams are scoring just over 48 combined points on offense, and the defenses aren't getting scored on like quarterbacks are scoring on them for fantasy, if that makes sense. They allow a 54 combined point total on defense for these two teams. So I just think the total is kind of gross, but when you think about how this game plays out, like both teams are throwing 62% of the time, both are running tons of plays on offense. And again, we see Atlanta stands out as the worst team in yards per play, allowing the most yards per play in the NFL. So I just think this is really one of those games where you have a pass-heavy offense going against a team who struggles throwing the ball, but Denver is playing a defense that is outlier bad. So do you guys think, D.Brown, do you think Denver is going to be able to keep up with your Falcons this week?
I don't know. Drew Lock has not looked great. Like you said, he came alive in the second half last week, but for the most part this season, when he's been available, he hasn't looked great. I don't know that they will be able to keep up. Yes, the Falcons defense has been abysmal. They do have a couple of injuries this week as well, which should kind of open things up for Denver. I kind of like the over in this game, if I'm being honest, between the Falcons' bad defense. Broncos are pretty beat up on defense as well. AJ Bouye will be out this week. Calvin Ridley is questionable. Kind of a game time decision is what we're looking at with him. But I love Julio Jones this week. With AJ Bouye out, looks like Bryce Callahan will probably be the best bet to match up with Julio Jones. And I tweeted this out earlier today. Julio Jones coming in at 6'3" and Bryce Callahan coming in at 5'9". I'm pretty sure Julio is going to make some cheddar come tomorrow. So look
press
for Julio.
And hold that Y button.
With Calvin Ridley kind of questionable with that ankle injury, I'm looking for Julio to have kind of a big game this week. I like him as a top 5 wide receiver here in week 9.
Totally. And so I think the spread is kind of, like I mentioned, that total is kind of gross to me just because I can't get a good feel on if Drew Lock will be able to keep up, That's why I think the spread is kind of gross here too, marmalade style. Atlanta gets 4 points here. So I think it's interesting that Atlanta is 4-point favorites. So if I want to bet, I think I'd actually be looking at the Broncos. They've actually paid off well this year. Denver's 5-2 against the spread. And sorry, D.Brown, just never bet Atlanta because, heart attacks, holes in pockets, and this year's been even worse than ever. So Trav, do you got any extra injury information there before I get ahead of myself?
Yeah, so for the Broncos, Philip Lindsay was questionable, didn't practice Thursday, limited on Friday. Tim Patrick is questionable with a hammy, limited throughout the week, but he missed every practice last week, so this week is a step in the right direction for him. And then just real quick on the Falcons there, Gurley didn't practice Friday due to a non-injury. He should be good to go. Like D.Brown said, Calvin Ridley is questionable, didn't practice all week. I would be leaning towards that he's going to be doubtful there. So could be another gauge week. And then with Tim Patrick being questionable, we could be in for another Hamler and cheese sandwich as well.
Mm-hmm. So I want to stay with the road team here first, just as I go through my notes here. I really like the wide receivers for Atlanta in this matchup, like AJ Bouye. Like it's a pretty nice setup, and they're definitely giving up a lot of points to the quarterback and wide receiver position in Denver. Obviously, both teams are. I want to ask, because we are starting Julio Jones, we are not starting Calvin Ridley. I agree with you, Trav, and we saw earlier in the year when he did play, when he was less than 100%, it was a pretty ugly performance. But I want to ask about Russell Gage, because Callahan is not going to be covering anybody in the slot, obviously. So are we starting Russell Gage? What do you think, Jules? Are you starting Russell Gage this week as like a wide receiver 3-ish?
Yeah, I think that's the range. If you are starting him, that's what you got to kind of expect. He started off the season hot. I think he had that 100-yard game to open the season, and he was hot down the stretch last year. He built some rapport with Matt Ryan. I think he's a viable guy you can throw in there, but I don't think you're locked and loaded getting wide receiver 3 value. I think he could come out and disappoint you, and that's kind of what you get. This is a guy you can pick up off waivers, so you get what you get.
So would you start Russell Gage or Michael Gallup going against the Steelers?
I'll take Gage in that matchup.
Yeah, that's not a fair one. It's so easy to go against Michael Gallup this
I don't want
Gallup
anything to
had
do with that
targets
Dallas
last week.
offense.
What about a Jaguars wide receiver not named DJ Chark against Russell Gage this week with
This
Luton
guy.
starting? When the Luton starts,
I'll
when the
take
Luton
Laviska.
starts.
Yeah, give me
I'll
Visca
take
this
Laviska.
week. I love him this week.
Yeah.
Give me
Cool. And
Gage. Give me Gage.
I think I might start both of those ancillary pieces in Jacksonville over Gage, but I really like Gage, guys. Like wide receivers will be on the field like 70% of the time if they play for the
You're back,
Falcons.
guys.
In weeks 1 and 2, Buddy saw 9 targets and 12 targets too. So, Jules, who just left, mentioned his hot start. Yeah, 9 targets, 12 targets to start the season when, he was seeing lots of snaps and everything. And I think he has some sneaky positive touchdown regression coming too. If it comes for Matt Ryan, I think if it comes for Matt Ryan, it'll also come for Russell Gage. He's top 10 in targets and catches from the slot this season, 0 touchdowns from the slot. And really, Russell Gage has just 2 touchdowns in his career on 88 catches. Speaking of guys that are getting a little bit overvalued or undervalued, depending on your perspective, what do you guys think of Hayden Hurst this week? Because I love Hayden Hurst. I love the situation, the end zone targets getting used in the intermediate, but this week I don't like him. What are you looking at, Trav, with Hayden Hurst this week?
Yeah, I mean, some target volume should be there with Calvin Ridley out. So one would think right away that he's going to be a great play this week. But then you look at the Denver Broncos and their top 10 in fewest points allowed to the tight end. They've only given up 2 touchdowns to the tight end on the season. So I think they are a tough matchup for him. It could go either way. If he gets a touchdown, he's going to be in the top 12. If he doesn't get a touchdown, he's probably not. So that's a little bit hedging, but I'm kind of with you, Ty. I might be shying away off of what could be perceived as a bit of a prime matchup, but isn't quite.
Who is the Broncos safety? Stellar safety.
Simmons?
Yeah, Justin Simmons. That's
Simmons,
the
yeah.
fella.
He's a
So yeah,
baller.
he is probably the best player in the NFL at defending tight ends right now.
He's
So
a
I think
baller.
so that's my big note for even you, D.Brown, who would love Hayden Hurst because you get to see how athletic he is on a weekly basis. Even you're fading him a little bit this week, eh?
Absolutely. And just let me back up here to the last game. Breaking news here from Adam Schefter. Chargers wide receiver Keenan Allen had a sore throat Saturday, tested negative for COVID, but needs to pass other COVID tests before being cleared to play Sunday versus the Raiders, per source. Team hopeful Allen will play Sunday, but also preparing as if they won't have him just in case. So, heads up with Keenan Allen. He's probably locked into anybody who's got him. Mike Williams would definitely get a big boost if he were to miss any time, and Hunter Henry, as we mentioned before, would also kind of get a boost.
Totally, and I think
Sons
Justin
of Dynasty
Jackson,
insider.
and I think Justin Jackson, who's seen 5 targets 3 games straight, gets an uptick there for sure. I think KJ Hill actually gets into like super deep start 3 wide receiver multi-flex leagues because he'll probably assume that slot role, and then Jalen Guyton, somebody who can always catch a 70-yard touchdown anytime. Thank you for that, D.Brown. That is really good. So where were we? We're talking about fade the Hade, I guess, but not like I'm not putting this guy in a fantasy Hurst either. Like I think he is more than fine going forward for Hayden Hurst. Just a bad matchup. And I know Ridley's out, but that doesn't take Justin Simmons off of him. I'm sitting him in an important league. Do you think I'm going to regret sitting Hayden Hurst?
Who are you starting?
Brian? I can't even remember off the top of my head. I think I'm starting Logan Thomas over him, to be honest.
Okay,
I honestly, guys, I might have started Robert Tonyan over him.
Oh, that's gonna hurt because
I don't even
didn't
want to
help
check.
a lot.
All right, guys. Hold on. Let me visit something real quick. In the original Gong Show Dynasty League, okay, you guys may remember this, but I recently lost Kittle. I'm competing, obviously, for a championship, sitting at 7-1 currently. Okay, I don't know if you guys saw the trade or not, but I had to sell on George Kittle because I'm competing. So I sold for 21 first, 22 first, and Logan Thomas, the aforementioned. What do you guys think about that? Did I sell too low on Kittle there, or as a competing team at 7-1, getting a 21 first, a 22 first in order to bargain and maybe buy a few more pieces in order to try and secure the championship for a second year in a row, might I add.
Had to add that.
What do you think? What do you think there about the value that I was able to secure for Kittle, being that he's gone for the season on a contending team, being able to lock up a 21 first and a 22nd first, and Logan Thomas? I think I have a couple of other decent tight ends to kind of boot in that league, but what do you think on the value there? And what do you see if you're selling Kittle today as a contender? What are you looking to get?
So just a note there, you also got Russell Gage in that deal.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
For the guy who always busts my balls for acquiring Eagles, you have no problem acquiring those Falcons, D.Brown. I think the perception of the deal, just looking at Logan Thomas's name and Russell Gage's name, probably might shy away from that. But I think once you're able to put players into where those picks are, I think that's going to pay off handsomely for you, especially because it goes 2 years down the road. Kittle's probably still going to be elite, but you're going to be at a place where you are restocking the cupboards for what is a championship roster. So I like that move if you can go for it. Just real quick, D, I just want you to mention who your one-loss came to.
What if I told you I don't remember?
It was exactly me. It was me. But my team's not that good in that league, so that's where I stopped the bragging. But I don't mind the trade, D. I like the 2 firsts for Kittle. I like that, especially because it's not a tight end premium league. Kittle is an advantage, but you get those 2 firsts, man. What are you thinking, Brian?
Initially, just hearing the trade, I just assumed tight end premium. I didn't really like it, especially with the second first being a 22. I think I'm in the same position where in one league where I'm 7-1 as well, just lost Kittle, and I have Logan Thomas that I picked up off waivers at the beginning of the year, and I also have Tunyon that I picked up off waivers, and a couple other options. I would have rather kept Kittle and tried to give off a piece off my bottom end of my roster, maybe a lower pick, and get Jared Cook and had him for going forward for a 3rd championship. But that's just me. But at least you have those firsts going forward to rebuild. I don't know what the whole shape of your team is.
Yeah, and we don't have to get into the. I was just kind of throwing that out there. That's the one area that I have sold Kittle. I've got him in two or three leagues, but that was the one where I was truly contending, and I'm really looking to kind of run that back to back there. And at this point, even like I said, I didn't necessarily need Logan Thomas to fill in. I've got a couple other options there. But just to get a little bit more capital, maybe to buy a few more pieces. I'm hurting there. I can't remember exactly who else, but I'm hurting for flex options at this point. So being able to move on from Kittle and maybe get a few more draft capital pieces that could be valuable for some trade capital down the road was kind of my move there. And Kittle, while I'd love to keep him, it was kind of a dead for me at this point this year. And like I said, I'm trying to repeat this year. So I acquired Kittle this offseason in that league to kind of shore up my repeat. So losing him, I don't mind moving on at this point.
That league's getting shut down if you win it twice in a row, D.
Fuck it. That's not the first league I've shut down, if you know what I'm talking about.
Well fucking played, buddy. Ty, why don't you get us back on the rails, dude?
Well, speaking of shut it down, let's talk. We were still mid that game. I want to talk about the other side of the ball. Unfortunately, we have to because they're playing the Falcons. So let's start with the resurfacer really quick. Drew Lock, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Atlanta Falcons. They're just in a tier of their own in fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. Falcons are giving up the most passing yards and touchdown passes to quarterbacks. Signal callers are scoring over 30 points a game. Multiple quarterbacks have been the quarterback 1 overall against them. What do you think, Jules? Can we fire up Drew Lock because of how good this matchup is? And even though he really only has one good half of football under his belt.
I think in redraft leagues, you probably have better options you can grab on waivers. But if you're in a 2-quarterback league, I'm firing up Drew Lock for sure this week. I think it's a juicy matchup, and I'll take my chances. But yeah, if there's better options on the waivers, I think that you can you can rely on that.
So I think that's the correct answer. Ding, ding. Like, he's a top target for quarterback streamers this week, I guess, right? Like, he's quarterback 17 in expert consensus ranking. But in week 10, guys, back to hard back end quarterback 2 territory for me, for Drew Lock. And even in this matchup, like, if you have Cousins against the Lions, there's Daniel Jones going against Washington. Even Foles gets the brutal Titans defense. Like, there are guys that I'm not going to argue with you if you go with over Drew Lock. Those are just a few quarterbacks ranked below him in expert consensus rankings, by the way. And a lot of people would love to have running backs to play ahead of Melvin Gordon this year. I think that's one thing that a lot of Melvin Gordon owners would say. He's coming off a boring revenge game against the Chargers. He's not. It's not a terrible on paper matchup for fantasy this week. He's the running back 18 in expert consensus rankings. And Trav, what do you think? Because you talked about Philip Lindsay. Do you think Philip Lindsay's going to be 100% in this game? What do you think there?
Maybe not quite 100%. I think he is going to factor in a little bit just because he's kind of shown that he is the best runner in this backfield. But I think it is going to be a heavier share on the side of Melvin Gordon. Funny enough, the Falcons defense is bottom 5 in fantasy points per game allowed to every position but the running back position. So like you said, it's not a terrible matchup, but it does seem to play into the passing game with Atlanta being able to score points. So I think unless Melvin Gordon's getting 5 or 6 targets, I think he could disappoint on that. What did you say? He was running back 18 in ECR?
Yeah, running back 18 in ECR.
Yeah, so I think he could disappoint on that a little bit, but I don't think he falls like outside of the top 30 or anything like that, just based on some of that rushing volume. But he's going to need to get some receptions if he's going to maintain that top 20 value like ECR says.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You said 2 things there. So this is a deceptive matchup because it's not a great matchup for running backs playing the Falcons, unlike every other position going against the Falcons. But the other thing is that it's all through the passing game, even the running back position, the Falcons passing funnel. And for the second straight year, running back receptions in Denver are probably the least efficient running back receptions in all of football. And the guy they brought in to combat that in, this season, Melvin Gordon, has been one of the worst running backs in pass catching efficiency this season. In fact, the top 2 most inefficient running backs in the passing game this year among all top 24 running backs are in this game. Todd Gurley, and down at running back 24 with 77 yards receiving is Melvin Gordon. So he probably is a top 24 running back this week against the Falcons. But do you guys think he's a top 24 running back going forward? What do you think, Brian?
Melvin Gordon?
Yeah, top 24 going forward.
I think he's right on the cusp. And actually, like Trav was saying, I'd actually prefer Lindsay going forward. I think if you watch even just the tape from the last game, he was the more explosive looking runner. And, you look at some of the stats for Lindsay, he's number 2 in breakaway run rate, number 6 in breakaway runs, yards per touch. He's number 7. He's looking a lot better than Gordon. Gordon's seeing a few more passes in the pass game, but I'd rather have Lindsay going forward.
Yeah, me too. I'm just looking it up here. So running backs are scoring 14 fantasy points per game against Atlanta on just receiving work compared to under 9 fantasy points derived from rushing against them. That's hilarious. And I bring that up because Melvin Gordon he's 46th amongst running backs in receiving yards. So if he can't make anything happen in the passing game against the Falcons in week 9 here, I am like 100% done with Melvin Gordon the rest of the way. I think and it's interesting that Trav agrees, Brian agrees. People are nodding, so I think it's crazy. And no concussion can keep Philip Lindsay down, man. And really, the hard truth for this backfield, I think. Yeah, thank you. But I think the only worry I have is that it is a hot hand approach, and Melvin Gordon, he's probably still the guy who gets trotted out for the first play of the game. But I'll take the dude who's trending the right way in his career, the hometown guy who I like far more as a runner. I mean, he's the walking, living example of underestimation on the planet. He's great at the goal line. He's so efficient. The problem is he's not very good in the passing game either. So what do you think, Jules and D.Brown? Do you guys both want Lindsay over Melvin Gordon down the stretch?
I do, yeah. I actually bought Philip Lindsay in the offseason in my main dynasty this past season. Traded James Conner for Philip Lindsay in 2 seconds, which turned into Laviska Shenault and Zach Moss. So, you know, I was pretty good return on James Conner, but you know, kids balling out this year. So, anyways, back to answer your question, man. Yeah, I want Philip Lindsay over Melvin Gordon. I think he's just kind of getting pushed out of the offense, and you know, he like you pointed out with his efficiency in the passing game is he's getting those targets, but he's not doing anything with them. And I think they start to rely more on Lindsay because he's just so much clearly the better back.
No,
you know, play your best players. You want to win football games.
except the Jacksonville Jaguars. So what about this play for fantasy guys? With so many bye weeks, blah, 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 would you ever start both Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler in like a deep league, hoping at least one goes off for you? Do you ever do stuff like that, D.Brown? Or is this the wrong team, wrong quarterback to do it with?
No, I mean, I feel like this might be a week. If you were going to dabble with something like that, this would be the week to do it. You know, I love, I was building some DFS lineups earlier tonight, and the lock Judy Fant stack is one that I was kind of starting to build around. Great pricing on lock this week. Got a great matchup. You know, if you want to throw Hamler in the mix, maybe to pivot off of Fant, if you got another tight end like TJ Hawkinson that you're looking to fire up for big points this week, you know, so be it. But, you know, I like Denver's offense. You know, quick shout out to, you know, a good friend of mine, Linda. You can find her at Lindell Lyons. She was touting Philip Lindsay over Melvin Gordon all off season. And, you know, I'm a big Philip Lindsay fan. I love him. You know, I watched a ESPN 30 for 30 special on him or something or rather about how, you know, during the draft while it was going on, you know, he was on the phone with the Falcons and the Falcons told him, you know, hey, if you're there at the end of the 5th, we're going to take you. And at the end of the 5th, he was there and the Falcons didn't take him. Philip Lindsay was speaking about how that just, you know, really just stabbed him right in the heart and, you know, getting him to come back and stay hometown in Denver. You know, that's just one of those players, man. If you hear his story, you hear where his heart's at. That's a guy you can't help but root for. And, you know, I'm a big Philip Lindsay advocate. And, you know, he's electric with the ball in his hands. He's a playmaker. And I am Philip Lindsay over Melvin Gordon rest of the season.
So that's a clean sweep. And it's interesting because you look at expert consensus ranking and Melvin Gordon's still pretty comfortably ahead for tomorrow for week 9 here, ahead of Philip Lindsay. So I think it's interesting that like the market might be a little bit lagging here. You should be definitely, you might be able to make that deal straight up, Melvin Gordon for Philip Lindsay. Trav, what do you think about this tight end room? We love Noah Fant. Everyone loves Noah Fant. He's a yak machine. But are you worried about what we've seen from Albert O the last few weeks, who has actually outscored him in fantasy over the last 3 weeks?
A little bit. We obviously knew that Albert Okwebunam, or AOK as you coined him, Ty.
So is everything A-OK for Drew? Is everything A-OK for Noah Fant?
I think it will be. But I think they need those receivers to get back a little bit healthy. I think Fant is the better player than AOK. I think we could see some more. I hope we see some more 2 tight end sets with those guys because they would look really nice. But
Fant in the slot.
Yeah, I think Noah Fant's going to be okay, just because he does have that versatile skill set where AOK is kind of the all-around skill set with still some really good receiving chops.
Yeah, can't spell fantasy without Fant. I like Fant. He's top 10 among tight ends, targets, catches, and receiving yards. Yeah, you love him, Jules?
Yeah, Noah Fant's one of my favorite players.
Do you like him more than TJ Hawkinson going forward?
Man, I love TJ Hawkinson too. They're like 4 and 5 for me in dynasty rankings. These are just 2 guys that I'm all about. I love their athletic profiles, both of them, and like in both their offenses, you know, more for TJ Hawkinson. He's just being utilized like that elite tight end. You know, he's getting targets like George Kittle, you know, and Travis Kelce and Darren Waller even at that point, right? So. I like both those guys, but Fant just has the type of skill set that he can take any one play to the house. You know, he doesn't necessarily need the volume to score touchdowns or to make big plays happen, right?
He is getting the volume. He's seeing 20% of the team's targets. Yeah.
But, you know, AOK coming in, you guys do bring up a good point. Like, that does worry me because he's getting those targets in the red zone. But, you know, with Noah Fant's ability to just make plays all over the field, I just don't think he's going to be off the field enough to not be fantasy relevant.
Exactly. I think they can kick, Noah Fant in the slot, and they can do that with Albert O, too. I mean, he's getting buzz because he has history with Drew Lock. That's being talked about a lot, but he was an athletic freak who just blew up the combine. That's when he really just, came into the picture. And, if he were to cut into Fant's production, maybe touchdowns a little bit. He did score last week. That was his only catch, though. And he has 27 fantasy points across the last 3 weeks. So, we like him. Let's go from one surprise rookie to a rookie who surprised most people by starting last week, coming out of his team's bye week, and he is going to the desert this week against a pleasant surprise defense. So if everyone's still with me, I'm going to the Miami Dolphins at the Arizona Cardinals, and I think this is
Sorry to kill your Tua boner there. I really want to jump into that last matchup on Monkey Knife Fight if we could. Is that cool?
Yeah, for sure. Go back to Atlanta and Denver.
Yeah, sorry, dude. I should have found a better cut in, but I'm just Mr. Interrupter tonight. Stuff
your stories in a sack.
Yeah, I just really like that matchup for this. I think we could be able to make a little cheddar. So we're gonna look at a more or less game as we usually do. I think we wrapped that game up really good, guys. We covered it pretty top to bottom from the tight ends on to the quarterbacks and
not the wide receiver position. We could have gone on and on. We actually saw Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler flip spots last week when it comes to who plays in the slot and who's on the perimeter. So that's a big watch for Jerry Jeudy going forward. KJ Hamler played a ton of snaps, but so did Deshaun Hamilton. If we remember back to week 3, which was the first game without Cortland Sutton, we actually saw KJ Hamler play over 90% of the snaps and Deshaun Hamilton play under 20% of the snaps. And just Jerry Jeudy, man, he's seeing 20% of the targets, 28% of the team's air yards, but he still doesn't have a game with 6 catches and hasn't hit 80 yards receiving yet. So, I didn't want to leave too much if you're going to say that, Trav. So sorry about that.
No, that's cool, man.
And you interrupted me.
Yeah, absolutely. Tit for tat, man. Tit for tat. Okay, so we're going to play more or less. We're going to try and put a little bit of coin in old T-Rav's bank here, boys. So hope you got your game faces on. We're going to talk about Matt Ryan first with a line of 290.5 passing yards. That seems like a fairly high line, but this passing volume can get him there no problem against the Denver defense that's been kind of middle of the pack against quarterbacks. So, Brian, why don't you start? Do you think Matt Ryan hits that 290.5?
No, I don't think he's gonna hit it there. I don't think Denver's gonna push him for enough points. And Denver right now, their passing yards allowed per game is sitting at 255, and I'm just gonna take the under on that.
Very nice. Ty, what about you?
Yeah, I'm under too, and I think I'd go under on passing touchdowns for him as well in this matchup. Right. One thing we always like to think some of these matchups are going to be a shootout, and they certainly have shootout potential, but I like to do that in matchups where I like the coaching staffs and the offensive coordinators a lot more, like a Carolina Panthers, for example. So I'm gonna avoid this one too with Matt Ryan.
For sure. D.Brown. Yeah, okay. D.Brown, what do you think for 290.5 receiving yards?
Matt Ryan, give me the fucking over, dude. Are you kidding me? All Matt Ryan does is throw for 300 plus.
He did it the most last year. Him and Jameis Winston tied for the most 300-yard passing games last year.
Jules, polish us off on Matt Ryan.
Oh, man, you guys are going to hate me, but I'm going to make you have to choose, Trav, because I got the over as well.
Yes.
I hate it when you bastards do this. But I guess it's my money, so it makes complete sense, right? I'm going to go with the under. I'm sorry, D. I love you, buddy.
Bro, I mean, you got the Atlanta expert on, and you're taking the under when the Atlanta says over. Retract that statement, sir.
I am sold. We are going more, baby. He's hitting that.
I mean, what the fuck am I doing here?
I'm not here to promote Matt Ryan.
You're here to talk politics.
Yeah.
Yo, Trav, I fully expect a fucking degenerate tweet if Matt Ryan does not get over 290 tomorrow.
You're gonna get one. You're gonna
Okay,
get one.
I expect it. If you don't do that, I mean, I'll probably send you a tweet.
Yeah, I will have gone soft if I don't do that. I will have gone soft.
Set it up.
So okay, let's move on to Drew Lock. Jules, we're gonna start with you. 268.5 for old Drew Vember, as our buddy Jetpack Galileo is calling it.
I hit the over on that one too. That feels like a pretty low line for what I project to be a bit of a higher scoring game.
D.Brown?
I'm going to take the under on that one, actually.
Not so convicted on this one, are you?
No, you know what? He's going against my Birds, even with a beat-up D. Drew Lock, there was a lot of hype around him over the offseason after a small sample size of, I think, 5 or 6 games last year. And all in all, he's disappointed this year. He got beat up and missed a little bit of time, but aside from the second half of last week's game, we really haven't seen much out of Drew Lock that I've been impressed by. I'm taking the under here against my Birds.
Ty?
Yeah, I'll take the under. I mean, Drew Lock only hit 210 yards passing in 1 of 5 games last year. And this year, I'll give him credit. He's hit 245 yards passing in the last 2 games, so he's trending the right direction, but he didn't even hit 220 in either of the first 3 games of the season. So, that would be his second best game of his career. So I'll take the under just to be safe.
Yeah. Brian, I think I know where we're going to land here, but let me know what your answer is.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I'm taking the over, so you're gonna have to be the deciding factor here. That Atlanta, they're giving up on average 323 yards passing to quarterbacks on the season, and with a banged up running back core, and that being the only halfway decent part of their defense for Atlanta, I think Lock's gonna have to throw. I'm gonna go more.
Jesus, what are you guys even doing here if I'm making all these decisions? Fuck it, we'll go more. Fuck it, I'm with you. I like that point about the running backs.
Go more all the way around just while we're on it.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Brian's answer on the Julio line of 95.5 yards. Ty, what are you thinking for Julio hitting the Hundy Burger?
Yeah, I'll go over with Julio easily. I think this is like a 160-yard blow-up spot for Julio for sure. A classic 200-yard
and he scores.
game.
Yeah. D.Brown, I think I can probably answer for you, but why don't you indulge me anyway?
Give me that over. I already told you Julio's top 5 this week. He's about to smash Bryce Callahan, make him look like a little kid. Like a little kid.
And Julian's probably going to go with the under just to piss us off, but we are taking the more. What's the word, Julian?
How am I gonna tell you to hit the over on Matt Ryan without expecting 100 yards from Julio?
I dig it. All right, boys. I'm going to throw a 20 spot on that one. The multiplier.
Big spender.
Yeah, the multiplier is 6 times, so that'll be 120.
I love the over game.
Bank. Thank you, boys. I appreciate that. Just real quick before we ride out, I do want to say a quick word from our sponsor, Monkey Knife Fight. If you want the best DFS player prop games in the industry, jump onto Monkey Knife Fight. Monkey Knife Fight is sweeping the nation right now, and we at True North are proud to be doing it along with them. They've got games for all sports and skill levels that are sure to keep you on the edge of your seat, with endless opportunity to watch your winnings pile up. With our promo code TNFF, Monkey Knife Fight will match your first deposit up to $50. So sign up now with our promo code and you can get up to $50 of free money to start making some bank. Again, that's monkeyknifefight.com, and the promo code is TNFF at your first deposit to start playing today. And we're back in the spot with the True North crew and our friend D.Brown from the Sons of Dynasty. Boys, we cleared the 2-hour mark, but we're still ready to rock. I'm still entrenched in my seat. Might need to take another smoke break in a couple minutes, but in True North fashion, another marathon epi, because we do nothing less but hit these matchups thoroughly. That's kind of what we do here at True North, is we want to touch these matchups, and everything we analyze from top to bottom So it's a thorough approach, and we provide all of the information that fantasy gamers need to go out and get these W's, whether it's just for this week or if it's for the rest of the season. So we appreciate anybody who stuck it out with us. Our loyal fans will know this is kind of on brand for us. So we're here for a little bit. Josh is in the comments there saying we touched thoroughly. Way to make it weird, Josh. Only you. Only you.
Man, I love Josh. Josh is such a stand-up guy.
Yeah, Josh is the man. We love the whole crew over at True North. So go check out the whole podcast network. Ty's just coming back from a bong hit, but I am going to allow Ty. I know I killed your Tua boner earlier, so feel free to resume your erection for Tua Tagovailoa.
Okay, so what were we talking about? Him, he was coming off his first. Yeah, it's with the tongue, with the G. Yeah. So coming off his first start and whatever, everyone hates Tua now, one start. The guy got the win, first win by a lefty, I think, since Michael Vick, by the way. Now Tua Tagovailoa has to travel across the country to play the Cardinals defense, which the Cardinals defense has been really good, guys. And the Cardinals are coming off their bye week, so that's always something you don't like to see when they're facing a rookie quarterback and they have a decent defense. So speaking of pleasant surprise defenses, the reason we kind of left this game so long, why it's so buried on this list, even though it's a really good football game, is it's a super low point total, just 49, and it actually opened at 48. And I was surprised to see because we know Arizona is playing super fast, but I didn't know how slow the Dolphins were playing. Check this out. The Cardinals are running exactly 10 more plays than per game than the Dolphins this year. So we're really going to see somebody get to, enforce their will, so to speak. We love to see the defense, the time of possession, the sustained drives, the red zone efficiency. Everything is coming together for this Kingsbury offense in Arizona, all the things they lacked in 2019. And that's what's allowed like all this no huddle and spread offense to really take flight, why we're attaching to the Cardinals for fantasy. But the Dolphins defense has just been sensational. So because both these teams are allowing Miami is allowing under 20 points per game this year. So what do you guys think is going to happen with this strength for strength matchup?
I think the Dolphins are probably going to continue to try and protect Tua a little bit. Last week, he only had 22 pass attempts. The weird piece about that is that the running back room in Miami is a bit of a mess there. We know Myles Gaskin's out and he's on the short-term IR. Matt Breida is actually out as well. They just acquired DeAndre Washington from the Chiefs' practice squad. So it's looking like it's going to be the Jordan Howard show once again with I don't think DeAndre Washington is even able to suit up yet. So it's going to be Jordan Howard and Patrick Laird in there. So it's going to be interesting to see how much they can actually sustain that running game to protect Tua, or if he has to get unleashed a little bit against the Cardinals, whose defense has been pretty decent. So that's kind of where I think the Dolphins are going to try and play it another slower game, kind of Ty, like you alluded to. But if the Cardinals can get up a couple of scores, which we know that they can in any given game, it'll be interesting to see if they can stick to that.
So what do you think, Brian? Are you betting on the 30-point per game offense from Arizona? Or are you betting on the 20-point per game defense from Miami?
I'm gonna go with the Arizona offense here. They've been moving the ball really good. I think Chase Edmonds coming in, he's going to be a little bit more efficient in the backfield than Drake's been. And I'm going to go with the Arizona offense here.
So that's the big story, right? Chase Edmonds in this one for fantasy. We are all firing him up this week, no doubt. The Dolphins are a really strong defense, but they are a top 10 matchup for running backs still. They are racking it, like running backs are just racking up rushing yards and receiving yards and touchdowns against the Dolphins. What stood out, Trav, the Drake is out, right? He's out. He's on the IR.
He is on the IR. It is the Chase Edmonds show. Aside from that, there's no other concerns for the Cardinals. DeAndre Hopkins is going to be back and good to go. So, yeah.
And like Edmonds already was, but now is like a really strong league-winning candidate for 2020 fantasy leagues around the globe, guys. So 100%. If you had to say, I'll go to you, D.Brown. Who do you want? Like, be bold if you want, but where would you rank Chase Edmonds rest of the season?
Chase Edmonds, as of right now, obviously Kenyon Drake plays a role in where you're going to project him moving forward, but he's a back end RB1 for me right now. I was big on Chase Edmonds, investing in him last year. Cliff Kingsbury coming into Arizona, I was big on the play volume. Kenyon Drake, never been a big believer in him, obviously, but he looked good in his limited time last year when he came over to Arizona. But, obviously I've ended up with quite a few shares of Chase Edmonds. Like I said, I bought into the volume last year, and I'm feeling pretty good about any and all of my shares at this point. Edmonds has looked like the better back, quite frankly. Drake has struggled, and anywhere that you invested in him, you're probably kicking yourself right now. Edmonds has looked like the better back, and this is the first time this year that we're really going to get to see him have the bulk of the carries. And really, this is the turning point where if Edmonds balls out tomorrow, we could really see him become the 1A of this Arizona backfield. And, with Drake banged up, not really sure when he's going to come back. But if Edmonds really comes out here and balls out, I don't see him letting loose of this, starting role moving forward.
So I think that's beautiful. Beautiful stuff. We like Chase Edmonds, and this week he's probably a top 10 running back for everybody. But I kind of brushed past the fact that Arizona, they're favored by 4.5 points in this game. So Vegas is still expecting them to put up some points in this game. Both teams, by the way, are 5-2 against the spread this year. Whatever side you fall on, hit that shit. And is anybody hitting Tua in Superflex this week? And I want to go to Jules because I think I asked you about Drew Lock.
Yeah, I actually am starting Tua in a super flex this week. My choice was him or Phillip Rivers, and I'm playing the upside in what Tua can bring. I think they could get behind in this game with that Cardinals offense, but like you guys pointed out, this Miami defense is legit, and this could actually be one of those games that it looks like it's going to be a great fantasy game, and both teams just kind of underproduce for fantasy, pound the rock and control the clock. And I think that's possible with both these offensive minds. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited about Edmonds in this game, but I'm not sure I'm a big fan of a lot of pieces here.
No, and I think that's kind of the right answer for sure. Like I think it's funny, like he's below Drew Lock and those guys we kind of talked about in expert consensus rankings, but I think he's definitely like just in that tier, but he's above guys like Phillip Rivers. And then once you get past Phillip Rivers, you're talking Kyle Allen. And then if the Luton starts right behind him, and then, other Keanu Reeves replacement quarterbacks. Actually, is Tua, I'm pretty sure Keanu a lefty in the replacements? Like, I'm pretty sure either that or he just
I think he is.
I have no idea.
So, yeah.
Either that or he has horrible mechanics in that movie. Probably both.
Probably both.
We don't have enough lefties in the league, man. Shout out to Tua, man. I really hope this man succeeds because we need another lefty. I am a left-handed person.
Or a lefty.
Only now hear me out. Hear that. Many have labeled me ambidextrous.
Devils.
Okay. Many have labeled me. I'm not a label guy myself, but I write with my left hand, but I do everything else with my right hand. Any sports-oriented things, I'm right-handed. The only thing I do with my left hand is right. Other than that, I'm right-handed. But,
thing.
Yeah, no, hey, stranger danger.
Hey, what hand do you eat with, though?
I'm both. It depends on what side of the plate I'm trying to grub.
Wow, you are versatile. I like that. That. Hey, real quick, boys, just a correction. Shout out to our awesome fans in the comments. Kenyon Drake is in fact not on IR. He's been listed as day-to-day, but ruled out for this week. So big shout out to everybody keeping us in line. That was my bad. I was totally supposed to be on the injury front this week, but I blew it. Surprise, surprise.
Way to go, fearless leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Fake it till you make it, Brian.
Okay, guys. So speaking of IR, and speaking of blowing it, guys, people just absolutely flushed their fab down the toilet with Matt Breida this week. And just to touch back,
Really?
just to touch on, Well, isn't he out? Isn't Matt Breida out in this game?
Yes,
He is.
But how much was he going for on waivers?
I mean, he was actually kind of.
I saw him go for like $1 in any of my leagues.
Oh, really? He
he-
was like,
I would have dropped a good chunk if he was out there on my waiver wires. I would have dropped a decent chunk on him before the news of his injury for sure.
yeah, and I even think of it like in every home league, he goes as somebody's waiver priority, right? He's just somebody who does get claimed on waiver. So I just, I guess fab was the wrong way to put it. I was just trying to be poetic, Brian. Like, give me a break. we're like,
Sorry, I
2.5
played too
hours
much
in.
Dynasty.
Yeah.
I didn't see him going anywhere.
No,
Yeah.
that's a great point. But Miles Gaskin, I think like he's on the IR for sure.
Hayden.
That guy can pipe in if I'm wrong about that one too. So
No,
the
I think he
Dolphins,
is.
the Dolphins' strength of schedule against the run is spectacular during the fantasy playoffs. So we should still buy Miles Gaskin. I think this is actually a good opportunity to do exactly that. But we're looking at a motley crew of running backs this week. If we are starting any of them, who would it be? Like, is anybody starting any of these running backs?
None.
No.
I don't want
Wow.
to. I really don't want to. Like,
Okay.
I have to in a league. But it hurts.
Which
yeah,
one?
Is it against
I'm
me?
Jordan
Give-
Howard.
Give
who are
me
you playing
Laird
him
over
I
Howard.
think
this
I want Laird. Yeah, but
Oh, I'm playing him on a roster that's just like my entire bench is going to put up zeros this week, so it's like a must situation. But I'm not. I wouldn't play him over many people if I had them.
So what
Like, would
about
you
like
play him
Lynn?
over Travis Homer?
No.
No.
Who Howard?
Howard, yeah.
No.
I'd rather have Homer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And it's a
especially with the point total in that
Exactly, yeah.
Seattle game.
Mhm.
And the implied total for Miami, like it's just the worst possible game to start. him
Yeah,
for
no,
sure.
I really see this Miami game being kind of a slow game. Tua kind of gave us a glimpse of that last week. I don't think Arizona's going to have their foot pedal or their foot on the gas pedal for much of this game. You know, I like Chase Edmonds, but I think Kyle Murray's going to kind of be able to slowly chip away at this game, and it's kind of going to be a low-scoring affair. Miami's defense has really kind of come out the last couple of weeks. They've looked good, so I expect them to
Savian
give
Howard back.
a little bit of a fit here, and I think this is kind of going to be a low-scoring slugfest.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think the only other watch in this game really is what happens in the slot in Miami. I think we want to watch that with Isaiah Ford getting traded in division there. That was kind of interesting. Because like I think it's interesting because a lot of people are talking about what's his face, LBJ, Lynn Bowden Jr., who, yeah, he profiles more as like a slot wide receiver gadget guy than he does a running back. Get those Wildcats going, early 2000s Dolphin style. But I think maybe we could talk about Mike Gesicki because I think he's the big winner in the slot, and he's played the highest % of his snaps in the slot among all tight ends since the beginning of 2019. But he's limited in overall snaps because of that. So now he can get on the field more because he is seeing the majority of his snaps as a slot wide receiver, essentially, and one of the guys who was vacuuming up snaps and targets in the slots at times. Isaiah Ford, he's gone. So he's ranked as just a tight end 15 in expert consensus ranking this week. Do you guys like him against Arizona at all? I mean, they were historically bad against tight ends last year, but do you guys also think, can Mike Gesicki be a tight end one going forward? What do you think, Jules?
Yeah, I think whenever you get a guy, especially you're talking about playing in the slot, when you get an athletic guy like that who's lining up on slot corners, and it's tough to defend, and if they get him into mismatches, they can use that to their advantage. And I think Mike Gesicki can eat. We've seen games where he's able to just be a monster, right? And then sometimes he disappears. So you got to kind of know that could be an outcome, but I think you can fire him up in this one, and he can be a safety valve for Tua.
Yeah, he is solar eclipse for sure so far. I hope we see him more. What, D.Brown, do you think are you starting any wide receiver in this game after what we saw in the first start with Tua?
If I can help it, no, I'm not starting any Miami Dolphins this week. After what I kind of saw from Tua last week, I'm a little discouraged on their offensive potential right now. So if I don't have to, I'm looking not to start really any Miami Dolphins this week against Arizona. Like I said, I'm expecting this to kind of be of a lower scoring affair. I kind of want to see Tua open it up a little bit. Preston Williams, Devonta Parker, Gesicki, all of them. There's not a single one that I'm feeling great about plugging into my starting lineup this week.
What are you on the same page there, Brian? Like, are you kind of worried that what we saw is that Miami's going to be a little more conservative?
I am. I think I'm sort of. They have to show it before I'm gonna play them confidently. I think it was a tough matchup. Tua coming in against that defensive line for the Rams. Aaron Donald is gonna fucking be right up in his grill. You got Ramsey back there lurking in the backfield. It's a lot to overcome. Luckily, their defense was able to hit a few scores, and Tua really didn't have to do a lot. I think it's kind of a blip on the radar. I think there's brighter times ahead, but I'm not starting anybody this week with any sort of confidence.
Totally. And I think that's kind of the point I was trying to, like, I don't want to rush to judgment, even though I do agree with everything you guys are saying. It wouldn't surprise me if Tua comes out and has a decent game. I mean, I'm kind of hedging because I said he would be successful, but I know.
Well, I'll play Parker this week. I'm rolling him out in a couple lineups. Like
ECR is.
Yeah, as a wide receiver 2-3 option, right? Hopefully a 3, right? That's best case scenario. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Someone's going to have to catch the ball. Someone's going to have to make plays. I do think that, it's a lower scoring affair, but, there is still going to be some fantasy points in this game. And if I'm putting my money on someone to get it, it's probably Parker.
And look,
Chandler Jones is, going to be out this week too. So worth mentioning that, the Dolphins could find some success running inside with the Cardinals missing that key piece on their interior D line. So just something to monitor. If you're in a jam and you find yourself wanting to play Howard or Laird, Cardinals are missing that key piece there, which could open up some opportunities.
That's a good point. We've seen a lot of interior defense players really muck that up for people, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Tua going forward, because Devontae Parker and Gesicki really disappointed in that first one. Just 2 targets apiece. Devontae Parker did catch the lone Tua touchdown. And Preston Williams actually still even though he had a handful of targets, but a couple brutal drops. Does anyone want to venture a guess on how many receiving yards the Dolphins leader had in Tua Tagovailoa's debut?
16.
Yeah, attaboy, Brian. So you
fucking
guessed it.
Dirty.
And it was Myles Gaskin,
gross,
and of course Durham Smythe was tied for the most receiving yards on the team. So yeah, could have gone. That's a pretty disappointing, pretty disappointing total there. So we don't really need to talk about a lot more on the Cardinals. What do you guys think about Christian Kirk this week though, and going forward?
Yeah, I don't mind. Like, I think you're rolling him out as a wide receiver 3, and that's kind of what you expected when you drafted him. So, I'm starting Christian Kirk in my Scotty Fishbowl this week. I'm
must be nice.
Gonna put him in places that you have him. I think. Just a talented player. I always thought Christian Kirk was going to kind of fill that Will Fuller role for Nook. He takes majority of the work, and then there's the deep shot guy over top, and Andy Isabella fits that profile as well. So I think there's options, but Christian Kirk's had 8 targets in each of the past 2 games, and he's getting involved in the offense. 2 touchdowns, and not even long touchdowns. They were short. They were in the red zone. So that just kind of speaks to he doesn't have to just be a deep ball guy to have value. So I'll throw him out there.
Yeah, but he certainly is that deep ball guy in that offense this year. God,
for sure.
God rest the soul of my Andy Isabella dynasty shares. Like, honestly, if you look at his average depth of target, the deep targets, it is off the charts in relation to Christian Kirk's career numbers. It's just crazy. And now he has back-to-back games over 20 fantasy points in PPR, so it's like almost impossible to not call him a solid wide receiver 3 going forward. So I think it's wheels up, but this is definitely a tough matchup. He's only the wide receiver 42 in expert consensus rankings, and that is because the Dolphins secondary is just mean. So
True.
Nuke Hopkins is somebody obviously over 20 points per game. We're not worried about it all though. And we really aren't starting anybody else. So should we keep going here, or what are you guys thinking?
I'm down for a few more. Yeah, let's keep rapid firing through these bad boys and try and get through as many as we can.
Okay, so let's do another bad game for fantasy, really good game for football. The Ravens and the Colts, a battle of teams who are both 5-2, and the Ravens are playing the former Baltimore Ravens. The Colts are playing the former Baltimore Colts. That was what I was going for.
There you
go. But can we trust anybody from either offense? Is kind of annoying. Like both teams present bad matchups in this matchup too across the board. I don't even know if these teams are as good as the record suggests too. The Ravens are coming off a bye week loss to Pittsburgh. Lamar struggled to throw the ball, and no rest for the wicked because this is top 5 Colts defense against the pass and the run. And the Ravens defense has been stout too. Both defensive units are allowing under 20 points per game this year. So both offenses are top half in the league in points scored. That's why I'm looking at a 48 point total. So are we even very interested in looking at this game? It opened at 45.5, Trav.
I'm going for the under. I'm definitely going for the under. And I think the tricky piece about this game is the ambiguity in the situations that we ideally want out of these teams, right? So I think both teams were not really looking at the wide receivers as people we want to rely on. I personally don't think I would start any wide receiver in this game. It would have to be kind of dire straits for me. Mark Andrews, I think you can start, but for me, I would be looking ideally at the backfields in these teams, like good running games, good offensive lines, Lamar Jackson on one side. But we've seen for the Jonathan Taylor side, Nyheim Hines has been a thorn in that. And then Jordan Wilkins with the big 20 spot as far as carries this past week, where JT only got 12. So I think it's really ambiguous there and hard to start those guys. You may be relying on Jonathan Taylor, or maybe you picked up Jordan Wilkins off that 20-point game, but it's going to be really hard to expect any big production. So you got to be a little bit careful there and ready to take a lump. And then same as in the Ravens backfield with Dobbins and Gus Edwards, Ingram is looking like he's going to be out of this game. So I think he actually has been ruled out officially. So I'm looking at Dobbins as the guy I would start out of that, but the Colts are the best defense as far as fantasy points given up to running backs. So I think that's a really hard one to bank on, even with J.K. Dobbins looking good against your Steelers last week, Ty. So yeah, it's just a really hard matchup to buy into anything being certain.
Well, for me, what really stands out in this game is like Lamar Jackson, how he performs in this game probably goes a long way to like how we value him the rest of the season. He's like teetering right now. Brian, what are you if you had Justin Herbert and Lamar Jackson, who are you playing this week?
I'm going to play the hot hand and play Herbert in this one. You know, it's tough, especially if you got both those guys on your roster, because you drafted Lamar Jackson to be this top asset. You know, you drafted him high, and unfortunately you took an L on that. And I'm going to play Herbert in a matchup like this.
So Jules, say he's valued as a top 10 quarterback and your fantasy trade deadline's coming up. Are you trying to trade for Lamar Jackson, or are you trading him away?
Well, I think it all depends on the price for me. I'm not really trading him away because I think his value is it's too low right now. You know, where you took him in, especially if this is a super flex league, you know, you had to take him in the top 5 picks. And you know, and some people even in normal 1 QB leagues were taking him in the second, you know, 3rd rounds almost a steal for some guys. So, you know, I think it's hard to move on from that and just cut your losses when you invested so much, and you know it's half of a season. You know, I do believe it'll come from Lamar Jackson. That's why I'd be buying him. But I think this is the window,
and it will eventually. I mean, the Ravens get Jacksonville and the New York Giants in weeks 15 and 16. So ironically, Lamar could still win some folks their leagues this year. What are we thinking about the Ravens? Yeah. What are we thinking about the Ravens running backs? They have not been the league winning candidates we thought they might be this year, eh? Like get out the tissues here. It's pretty bad. But what are we thinking in a really tough matchup for J.K. Dobbins? What are you thinking there, D. Brown?
I don't mind J.K. Dobbins this week. If I'm looking for a ceiling play for the Baltimore Ravens, it's obviously J.K. Dobbins. I like what I saw out of him last week. With Mark Ingram sidelined, and with Ingram sidelined again this week, I'm willing to go back to the well. He was super efficient on his touches last week, and even with the tough matchup, I'm hoping that they just kind of start to ease him in a little bit more. And he's been one of the more efficient with his touches there in Baltimore. So I'm hoping they can kind of get him a few more and kind of ease him into this game. J.K. Dobbins is, I've kind of talked about this a little bit in the past, but Baltimore's running game is what I'm starting to kind of view as a mirage of sorts. You
mean they're not going to break their own record from last year for the best rushing offense of all time?
Well, not only that, but one of the most potent run games in the NFL, and yet we can't really seem to get a running back that feeds off of that. Mark Ingram, as good as he was this past year, efficient, getting touchdowns and stuff, without really getting that true workhorse role. And Lamar Jackson being really the best rushing threat on this Ravens team. I've kind of been looking to get out from underneath J.K. Dobbins where I can in Dynasty. And I don't know if that's going to come back to bite me or not, but I'm kind of starting to get out from underneath this Baltimore running back room. I just don't know that I can trust that the Baltimore running backs are going to get what I'm looking for as far as a fantasy football running back. So I'm just kind of floating that out there. You guys can weigh in, but I'm starting to begin to really kind of turn my efforts towards fading the Ravens running back room.
I think the problem with the running back room is that we just didn't expect so many people to be involved. Like, they still lead the league in rushing yards. They're 6th in rushing attempts, and they're averaging 5.5 yards per attempt rushing. So it still is, like, when you look at the numbers, a good running game, but it's just spread between so many people that it's just become so unreliable. I think you were spot on there, D, that if this continues, we don't want a piece of it. But if we were to see it be a two-man show in the running back room with Dobbins and Edwards, or whatever happens with Ingram, then I think it might clear up a little bit. But until we see that, I think you're spot on that it's a mirage.
Yeah, and I think you guys are both right. Like, it's just regression hitting. And D.Brown, I love what you said about what makes up like a top 12 running back, and the fact that you have to sell him based on the fact that he probably doesn't have. He's not ticking most boxes when you look at it. And you even look at last week, Trav, like with the splits, he got just one catch for 8 yards, even though he's in that receiving role in a negative game script against the Steelers. Sorry. And Dobbins wasn't the leader when it comes to volume, by the way. Gus and Lamar Jackson outcarried J.K. Dobbins last week, which is kind of funny to look back on that. So we're starting Dobbins. What are we starting? Anyone starting Gus Edwards?
Only if need be.
Yeah.
I mean, we're starting Demarcus Robinson over him, so.
Yeah, that's right.
Good ball. Good ball.
And yeah, we should point out that they are playing the Colts this week, who they're coming off a game where they gave up just 8 rushing yards combined to Adrian Peterson, DeAndre Swift. They've allowed under 450 rushing yards to running backs all season long. So it's pretty crazy. I don't really want Gus Edwards in this matchup. It's that bad. So yeah, and also, like, there's just zero. We talk about pass catching. Gus Edwards will never catch a pass. It's just like not even in his range of outcomes. It's crazy. Which sounds suspiciously, guys, like I'm talking about the wide receiver 1 in this offense, by the way. So what are we doing with Marquise Hollywood Brown here? Kind of another toughie. Like, Indy just doesn't allow very many air yards at all. But Hollywood has scored in 2 of his last 3 games. Is that enough for us to be starting to squeeze him into our lineups? What do you think, D. Brown?
No, I'm not gonna force Hollywood into my lineups by any mean, but if I have him and I'm looking for an option at wide receiver, I don't mind Hollywood this week. He's shown us at least a little bit of consistency as far as volume goes. While it's not gaudy numbers, as far as target share goes, he's hovering around that 20+% area with roughly 6 targets per week. And with Hollywood Brown, I'll live with that. It's not great, and the passing volume is never going to be elite as far as Baltimore's passing game goes. But I don't mind testing the waters with Hollywood Brown this week. Just like Tyreek Hill, it only takes one to really break the slate, and with six opportunities per game, I don't mind Hollywood Brown this week.
Brian, do you think he's like a top 24 wide receiver this week and kind of going forward? Like, do you think of him as a top 24 guy?
I think he's sort of right on that border. And like D was saying, he only takes that one shot to put you over the edge. And in this last week, he kind of called out Lamar and the staff saying he wants the ball more. And, sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? This week you might see him get a couple more looks. He might get that deep shot. Lamar might hit him a little bit more efficiently like he was doing last year, and you might benefit from that. So I have no problem playing with him this week.
I am not there. Just to chime in real quick, Hollywood has 1 week as with a better finish than top 36. So every week, aside from one, he's been a wide receiver 3 or worse. He's hitting my bench. Brian, I like all that stuff you said, and I know that he can get that any single week. But there's a lot of ifs there, and I don't think it's necessarily a Hollywood issue. I think it's a bit of that issue has been Lamar Jackson's passing and not being able to hit him necessarily. So he's bench riding for me until I see a little bit more consistency. It's a hard one.
You know what? Me too, Trav. And the other reason I think of is just the matchup. I think it's the matchup in particular that I'm really worried about, because you think of last week, he scored a touchdown, but that 3-yard grab was his only catch of the game. That touchdown was a 3-yard touchdown. And his only other bad matchup this year was against the Chiefs, who we talked about with Brashad Breeland. His 6 targets were good for 13 yards in that game. So I am worried about Hollywood this week. ECR is not as worried. He's the wide receiver 23 in expert consensus rankings. What about like Mark Andrews is somebody I guess we can skip to save time, but I will say that Mark Andrews has been the most boomer bust player in fantasy football this year. When he hits, you are getting a huge advantage at the tight end position, but in 4 games, he hasn't scored 17.5 PPR points or more. He's under 6.5 fantasy points in all of those games. So, we know that he scores a lot, but he's playing the Colts this week, who are the only team in the NFL who have allowed 0 touchdowns to the tight end position. Trav, do you have what's going on with the Colts for injuries this week? Do you have that by chance?
Yes, I do. Mo Ali Cox with a knee injury was questionable, limited throughout the week. Obviously, we're not hoping that he's a key piece for your rosters. T.Y. Hilton is doubtful with a groin injury. I didn't practice all week. So T.Y.
Never heard of him.
I see what you did there. And then Michael Pittman and Marcus Johnson were both full participants on Friday, and it looks like they're both going to go. So those two, you got Zach Pascal, the tight ends, you got Trey Burton in there, and old Jackie Doyle. So it's going to be a really hard one to peg who's going to be the pass catcher. I think for me, it might even be Zach Pascal as the guy that I want the most. But again, I'm not starting any of these guys if I'm not in dire straits.
Yeah, what stands out to me there is it sucks that both those running backs are playing. Just kidding. We always like healthy bodies. We want human beings to all be super healthy. But Jonathan Taylor in particular has been just super frustrating, because without Marlon Mack, like, that's what drives me nuts. He's living that dynasty upside right now, but he's barely inside the top 24, the running back position in PPR. And same goes for his week 9 ranking and expert consensus ranking, by the way. Hines is just killing Taylor in the passing game because the market share is there for the running back position. And Naheem for a Dream scored 2 receiving touchdowns last week. That pissed me off as well. And it sucks because Taylor has shown how explosive he can be after the catch already. But at least JT is getting the rushing work, right, boys? Wrong. Jordan Wilkins, 20 carries last week, and the rushing touchdown last week as well. Jonathan Taylor's been a top 12 running back just one time this year because he really is losing out on some of these most valuable touches. So what say you, D.Brown? Do you see him being able to right the ship this week in a game where the Colts are underdogs for Jonathan Taylor?
You know, I pushed my chips behind Jonathan Taylor the last few weeks. It seems like now he's had a couple of smash spots. It seems like the last few weeks, and it's kind of been underwhelming. So, you know, forgive me if I'm kind of starting to fade the hype a little bit. And I think you kind of can hear that echoing in the dynasty realm as well. JT's starting to feel like, you know, he's not really performed up to what the offseason hype was presenting to us. You know, and with Marlon Mack being out too, it really stings that much harder. As soon as Mack went down, you know, just like CEH with Williams, it was kind of green light, green light, green light. And both have kind of seemed to really kind of shit the bed as far as what we were preferring to happen. You know, so I have reservations this week as far as JT goes, and you know, that Colts offense in general. Phillip Rivers spreading the ball around, really no telling who it's going to go to. And with the emergency of Jordan Wilkins, you know, it came out after the game. Rivers attributed that maybe JT was a little dinged up, but you know, I don't really know what's going on there as far as their offensive running back prowess goes. So, you know, I have reservations for JT this week. Obviously, if you have him in certain areas, you're going to start him. But, you know, I'm not feeling uber confident.
No, I love what you said about the offense spreading around there. That's totally what's going on. And also about the rookie running backs. Like, it just trips me out to James Robinson, everybody.
Yeah.
All these rookie running backs, and James Robinson is easily going to be the like lone running back one in fantasy this year. That's crazy to think about. What are we doing about like Nyheim Hines isn't somebody I'm ready to start, but he's running back 34 in expert consensus ranking. So are people playing Nyheim Hines now?
I feel like if you are, you're chasing the touchdowns that occurred last week right now. So you know,
You're
obviously, I'm not
place.
looking to start him. You know, if I'm in a PPR league and I'm up shit creek, obviously I don't mind plugging him in. But you know, above being in a bind, I'm not looking to start Hines anytime soon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jules, do you like Hines or Wilkins?
You know, I kind of look at this as a three-headed horse right now, and I'm not really sure who it's going to be from week to week. So, you know, I'm not feeling real confident about any of them in my lineup. I think if I had to play one, it would be JT. But I'm not feeling great about it, you know?
Yeah, it's funny how like locked into RB2 status JT is now. It's sad. Like back end running back too almost. So looking at these wide receivers, we were on Michael Pittman watch. He had just one target, a short boring catch last week. Zach Pascal is Travis's guy, and I kind of agree because he's just eating targets in the slot. And then you have this tight end by committee that's almost as annoying as this running back by committee. And speaking of annoying, T.Y. Hilton is unstartable even when healthy. I think I already showed my dismay for him. Yeah. So trade him for Jalen Reagor if somebody will buy on name brand value or something. Like just get anyone for him, you know?
Yes, do that.
And then, so Zach Pascal, Marcus Johnson, these are the guys we're kind of watching. And then obviously, hopefully Pittman can have a better game. Toss in any points you guys want to make on the Colts before we move on. Actually, maybe does anybody think Trey Burton is a top 12 tight end too?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, let me then. I think he could be something.
I think he can be started. You know, he's got that touchdown upside, and his matchup isn't horrible. I'm starting him in one league, but I don't want to start him. He's not a great start.
Totally. And I think Burton has a touchdown in back-to-back games, a receiving and a rushing touchdown, and he is involved in their play calls at the goal line. You know what I mean? Like Burton's just that guy. So I think getting past the top 10 tight ends, you are just hoping for a touchdown a lot of the time at the tight end position. And Burton just isn't a bad bet from that angle, I don't think. And just RIP Allie Cox dreams. That
No
came
doubt.
out wrong.
Yeah,
That came out wrong.
Phrasing.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Next up, I have the Detroit Lions at the Minnesota Vikings, 10 a.m. game. The Vikings are coming off a huge win. Dalvin Cook was easily the Week 8 MVP in the NFL, let alone fantasy. Dalvin single-handedly just cooked the Packers. The Lions, on the other hand, got blown out by the aforementioned Indianapolis Colts. They look so bad trying to run the ball. The momentum these teams have coming into this game, I think, could continue too. The Vikings have the Lions number big time. And we're kind of ushering in a new era in Minnesota. So, I think it's crazy because they got just whooped in the season series last year. Matt Patricia is 0-4 against the Vikings as the Lions head coach. And even worse, Detroit has failed to put up double digits on the scoreboard in 3 of 4 games, 7 points in their most recent matchup, 9 points in both games in 2018. So I think the Vikings are the play here, and the under feels like the play here. Anyone want to fight me on those?
Yeah, let me jump in real quick. As far as Matthew Stafford goes, some ambiguity as far as his starting availability this week. And just within the last hour, Adam Scheffler did tweet and said that Matthew Stafford, who was activated off of the reserve COVID list Saturday, is not yet clear. Stafford's COVID test from Saturday morning still needs to come back negative on Sunday morning in order for him to be able to play against the Vikings. So a situation to monitor, need to say, be aware. Matthew Stafford, as of right now, it's looking like he's going to play, and as long as nothing comes back to say otherwise, I'm assuming that's going to be the case. But be agile in the morning. Stay water, my friends.
That one is super important too, D.Browner, because I left out the first matchup between these two teams from this season. That was a barn burner that Minnesota won 42-30. So I was kind of burying the lead for fun there. If you look closer into this matchup, Stafford didn't play he didn't play in the low scoring matchup from last season. He did play in that barn burner from earlier this year. So I just think it's interesting that game was a 72-point total. It's twice as high as any of the other 3 matchups these two teams have played with these current coaching regimes. And those 3 other games, the Lions and Vikings combined for 36 points or under. So a lot to look at there. Do you guys think this game has shootout potential so long as Matt Stafford's playing?
As long as Stafford's playing, yeah.
The interesting piece is that Kenny Golladay is not playing in this one, so he's not going to have that weapon down the field. It looks like a Marvin Jones game potentially, but who knows, right? This game could go either way. What's that over-under at again, Ty?
I'm just looking at it. I think it's 52 or something.
52 and a half.
Yeah, wow.
I'm gonna go with the under on that. I think I'm gonna go the under. Just because Matt Stafford coming back, it looks like he's gonna play, but the running game's been a little bit off lately, and I think he's gonna need that as he recovers.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting. Like I think it's hard to bet on a game going over 52.5 when you have Matt Stafford and Kirk Cousins and a Minnesota Vikings offense who might just run the ball 55 times in a game. But what you look at is these two teams just have horribly, inconceivably, unbelievably bad secondaries. Like these are the 2 worst secondaries I think probably in all of football. But yeah, I think the under was always the play, Trav. I think you're right. But it does worry me. Like I was looking at it, this line hasn't moved all week. Like it opened at 52.5 and it just hasn't moved. So it's trippy, and neither is the spread. The Vikings are 4.5-point favorites. So not much fanfare behind the Lions offense this week, if you know what I mean.
And it's interesting that it didn't move even with Matt Stafford cropping up with COVID during the week and having a miraculous 3-day recovery and being back, right? So
well, I think a lot of people are going to argue for him.
Sorry?
He never tested positive though. I think it was
it was the contact. Yeah, I think you're right. But even so, like
as long as he just tested negative for 5 days, and it was just assumed that it was contact. He never showed up, and he was going to be playing. And he's a vet, so if he hasn't practiced, what is that really to Stafford? You know, at this stage in his game, you know.
And plus, like he's a guy for fantasy. He's only he hasn't scored more than 23 fantasy points in any game this year. So he's just, I know he's going to be argued as a quarterback one in this good matchup. Actually, Jules, say you had Big Ben and Matt Stafford. Big Ben's in a juicy matchup against the Cowboys. Who are you going with?
Yeah, I think I throw Ben out there in this one. I think that's just the safer play. I do like Matt Stafford, but what we've seen from that Steelers offense is, I want that on my fantasy team. I am playing Matt Stafford in a few leagues this week, but I'm throwing. I got Drew Brees in over him and that one I'm debating here. I'm looking at that. I'm probably going to be tilting tomorrow morning, all the way up till 11 a.m. Right, because he's got Brees is that Sunday nighter, right, and he had popped up on the COVID injury report as well. So definitely some stuff to monitor. And, I like Ben though. I like Ben this week.
Yeah, they're both, and Ben definitely has the weapons, whereas Stafford can probably throw deep a little bit more. I think I just haven't made up my mind on Stafford. Like, I was super worried. He started the season 5 straight games under 300 yards passing. He's over 330 yards in back-to-back games now. In week 7, 2 weeks ago, I was like, do it against not the Falcons, right? Sorry, D.Brown, who's not here right now. But last week, Stafford posted the best game by a quarterback in fantasy all season against Indianapolis, who we're afraid of with Lamar Jackson. So, it's just one of those things where there's so many rabbit holes I can go down, and I won't even know after this week anyways, because he plays the Vikings, and he probably will have, 23 points right in that range. Yeah. But Stafford over Ben.
I'm playing Stafford over Ben. Yeah. That's coming from 2 Steelers guys too.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I see the game script, like the Pittsburgh Steelers could score 4 touchdowns on fucking interceptions, and Ben doesn't have to do anything and throw for 150 yards and gets benched at halftime.
So you're saying it's an Anthony McFarland game?
Yeah, maybe.
I worry about. I mean, you just said it yourself, Ty. He didn't hit 300 yards for the first 5 games, and a lot of that was without Kenny G, right? And now Kenny G was back, and he goes above 300 yards, and now he's out again. So, we'll see what we got there. And I was a big Matt Stafford believer all offseason. I got him in quite a few places as my QB2 in a lot of super flex leagues, and so I am rolling him out there, and I like that matchup, but I do have some concerns as well that it just doesn't all come together.
Yeah. Speaking of coming together, we really thought these running backs, man alive, we thought it was going to be a changing with guard a little bit here, but last week was so bad. So where do we stand with DeAndre Swift, Trav, this week and rest of the season? Top 24 in PPR or no?
Ooh, I think that's like the push point is top 24. Just because I think he does have that potential to continue to get more of that workload. But Adrian Peterson is like the NFL's cockroach. He just will not go away. He's like, it's like
him come on, that's Frank Gore.
I know that both of them. Fuck it. There's more
well, I'll tell you what. This week you guys are both right. In week 9, Darrell Bevel is going to give his boy Adrian Peterson the rock in this revenge game. Like, 100%. Double revenge game, by the way, for Darrell Bevel. And
Exactly. Good point. AP is probably going to be a thorn in Swift's side, at least this week, and probably throughout the rest of the season, just because they kind of want to pound it. So it's hard, man. It's hard. I think you got to start DeAndre Swift as a flex.
Yeah, you have to.
You have to. And like, you probably drafted him in like the 5th, 6th round, right? So you definitely have to, based on where your roster is at, based on the injuries that have happened around him on your roster, probably. So yeah, you're just kind of hoping for that big play touchdown with him, but it's hard.
Yeah,
it sucks.
He's ranked as the running back 15 in expert consensus ranking. The Vikings, it's a pretty good matchup. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. And speaking of good matchup, let's go into these pass catchers super quick. With Kenny Golladay out, the Viking secondary is beyond awful. Marvin Jones used to dominate the Vikings. His rivalry with Professor X was no Talib Crabtree rivalry, but it was a great wide receiver cornerback duel. I love that one. This new age though, do you guys think there's room for Marvin Jones to eat in this matchup, or will it be a lot of the run game or spread around in the offense, like TJ Hawkinson's guy I'm really thinking about there?
Yeah, I like TJ Hawkinson in this one. I think he's the lead dog for these. 1 second. Just Yeah, I think he's the leading receiver here. Sorry, I had a different screen pulled up. I couldn't see it. And I wanted to throw this out there. You guys like Marvin Hall at all? Any interest there?
I definitely think he's somebody you have to like. I think a deep 50-yard bomb that is a 10% likelihood of happening, in any game that would go to Marvin Jones could go to Marvin Hall. Yeah, like who knows? I'm not starving for either Marvin either. Yeah,
I'll play safest over Hall.
Yeah,
totally.
Like I think he's a play over Hall for sure.
Yeah.
And I bring those guys up because a touchdown is the way anybody's going to score for fantasy owners in this matchup, and it's a good bet for a touchdown. Despite almost half the league having an extra game under their belt compared to the Vikings, nobody has allowed more touchdowns to the wide receiver position. Wideouts have cashed in 15 times against the Vikings this year already. I think it's interesting, though, because Marvin Jones is sort of heating up, guys. Like after just one touchdown, failing to top 55 yards receiving in any of the first 5 games this season, Jones has season highs in fantasy in back-to-back weeks. The reason I'm a little bit hesitant, though, is the guy where, Jules, you said, like, it's so fun watching him blossom. TJ Hawkinson, maybe it's how ugly the tight end position is, but he's pretty much like a top 5 tight end in PPR right now. It's crazy with Kittle set to miss time. It kind of blows my mind. He also had 10 targets last week. I think it sounds crazy, but I have more faith in Hawkinson and touchdown upside than I do with Marvin Jones. And it's just what we saw earlier in the year was Marvin Jones having a hard time scoring in fantasy because TJ Hawkinson scoring all these touchdowns, right? That could have gone to Marvin Jones, but TJ Hawkinson, like he scored in 3 straight games before this Colts game last week, who haven't allowed to score to a tight end all year. And Marvin Jones scoring a deuce last week wasn't a death nail for Hawkinson. He still saw 10 targets, right? So I'm saying Hawkinson hurts Jones, not the other way around, in my opinion. And then add 1,000 bonus points for Hawkinson being a tight end. Anybody have anything to add on Detroit? Anything?
I think that was really well put, Guy.
Yeah, killed it.
So who's the other team in this game? The Vikings, right?
Yeah.
Just killing it over here.
We are also just cleared the 3-hour mark, buddy. We just cleared the 3-hour mark. We can let that slip.
So should we make this our last game, or what are you guys thinking?
Yeah, maybe we cut her after this one. Any of our viewers, we still got people in there, which is incredible. We really, really thank you for the support. The questions, guys, I don't know if you've been looking at the comments. Everybody is bumping, and we really appreciate that. Yeah, sorry that I haven't been able to keep up with posting the questions too much. I've been trying to answer them in the chat and keep us on track just because we are at the 3-hour mark. So we appreciate everybody. But yeah, Ty, let's finish off the Vikings here and then we'll ride out here.
Yeah, so we could just talk Cousins. I think the reason the Vikings are favored, by the way, shows up in this game. Like the Vikings went pure Dalvin Cook mode against your Packers. Ha 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 ha. Last week, one of the best teams in football. Sorry, Jules. It's just like everyone was so all over the Packers again. You know what I mean? I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
I'm just glad I didn't play against Dalvin in any leagues, so I didn't have to suffer that defeat twice, That's
almost like it's an equal feeling to winning a fantasy football matchup when you're not playing that guy who just exploded in the week, you know what I mean? Like 100%. It's almost as good as winning a match. Yeah, same feeling. Anyways,
it's just as good when Adams blows up.
Yeah, no kidding. Anyways. So, and Aaron Rodgers just playing the way he is. Yeah. And so you think of the Vikings, you think of running, you think of Kubiak. That's the team's identity, right? They were one of 3 teams last year to run the ball over half the time. They're one of 3 teams this year to be running the ball half the time. And if they have success flexing their muscles in the run game this year, I think the Lions could fall to 5-0-5 against the Vikings under Matt Patricia. I think they might too, because their linebackers are so bad. They've allowed over 115 rushing yards to running backs per game. Lions are also one of a handful of teams giving up over 1 rushing touchdown per game to running backs. So it ain't going to be no Cook's day off here, guys. But do we think, are we worried about Dalvin Cook performing and somebody like is it going to hurt Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson going forward? Because that's what we saw last week against the Packers.
I think it hurts both of them producing. I think one of them will produce on any given week, but it could become hard to tell who's going to be the guy for that if Dalvin is humming along like he was last week, right? So especially against the Detroit Lions, who are one of the worst teams against the run, both in the receiving game and the rushing game, it's going to be a big game for Dalvin, I think, and I think that could be to the detriment of one of these guys. It's almost going to be and it's weird because both of those guys have really versatile skill sets as well. But Adam Thielen has been like the deep guy this year. So it almost could be kind of defense specific. Ty, I think you and I were talking before about how the Steelers wide receiver core is going to be really specific to who they're playing, whether you need that slot guy or you need the big play guy. I think this could be kind of a similar situation between those two guys. I think the lucky thing for us is that there's only two of them, right? Is that, it's not 3 or 4 guys that are splitting all that work. So
very low volume though.
For sure. So I think one of those guys is going to perform every week, but we might see the second guy be a little bit more spotty. And we have to be really sharp in picking who that's going to be week to week.
Yeah. So maybe because last game we'll dive into it then, because I want to know, like, I think it's interesting. This is the Vikings, like, I don't even know how to articulate it. Like they've had a strength of schedule that has been so easy against the pass this year. And they have one of the toughest strength of schedules versus the pass in the second half of 2020. So do you think Adam Thielen, Jules, is a top 12 wide receiver comfortably down the stretch? Like, are you willing to say he's a wide receiver one?
Top 12, that seems like a stretch to me. I've got him sitting closer in the top end wide receiver 2 range. I think you're going to get good weeks out of him, but I agree with Trav. I think it's going to alternate as to who's who hits on each week, and I think Dalvin Cook is the focal point of this offense, and that's what it'll revolve around, not about the receivers. And it's tough. This offense it revolves around the run, and when you have a running back as good as Dalvin Cook and he can break these long touchdowns, and just like when he gets in space, it's just impossible to stop. It's not like they even really need to feed Thielen the ball, which is what he's got a lot of his PPR volume on in the past. So yeah, I'm not comfortable with him as top 12 for the rest of the season, but I do think that he's in, I think you can play him every week.
Yeah. So you guys are both saying that it might alternate between Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. So I think we definitely really, really need to monitor the cornerback coverage. Like, teams could choose to shadow Justin Jefferson over Adam Thielen. We've already seen that this year. So I think that's really interesting. It could swing their values.
Very good.
And for trades and stuff, it's tough. Like, Thielen came into the season so underrated, so it's not likely that he is even your wide receiver 1 on a roster, And obviously I want DK ahead of him. I want Keenan Allen ahead of him maybe, but it's hard to drop AT down far down the ranks. It's just been a couple duds that have really kicked us in the groin this year. But I just always come back to the run first mentality, the quarterback play. I mean, it was funny to see Kirk Cousins complete less than a dozen passes last week and get a win. Because I remember the Kubiak emphasis right in our face last year, where Cousins had 10 completed passes or something, won that game. But anyways, you worry because this budding rookie wide receiver Justin Jefferson is on pace for 1,000 receiving yards, and he's quietly leading the team in receiving over Adam Thielen. So I'll ask Brian, I'll ask you about him. Do you think Justin Jefferson is a solid wide receiver 2 going forward? And could he pass Adam Thielen in value this year?
No, I don't think he's going to pass him in value this year. Thielen's seeing more of the yeah, I know, right? He's seeing more of the targets, more of the percentage, and Jefferson, he's been very hit or miss. What does he have? 2 games? I think I did the math the other day. It's 65% of his points for the season is in 2 of the games that he's been on the field so far. I don't know. I'm gonna go. I'd rather go with the guy that's seeing the more consistent volume. He's the number 1 focal point for the passing game, not necessarily the whole offense. And I really actually like Thielen and Cousins in this matchup.
Totally. I think the market share is really interesting. The key is that this offense is also really condensed, right? It really is just going to those 2 in the passing game. Thielen is seeing 29% of the team's targets. Jefferson has a 24% chunk of the volume, which is a pretty astronomical volume market share percentage for a rookie wide receiver. Now, we know those percentages are less valuable in the Vikings offense than they are in most other offenses, but you just don't see multiple wide receivers with that kind of target share. And the air yards are just jaw dropping. Over 70% of the Vikings air yards in 2020 have gone to Thielen or Jefferson. And to pull it back to fantasy, the only thing holding Jefferson back in this offense is the pecking order. I love that you said like Thielen he's not going to pass him because Thielen's seeing such locked in work right now. Like the talent is close, I agree, but for now Thielen is just seeing the way juicier work, especially air yards without Diggs out of the way. Thielen's actually got the second highest share of his team's air yards in the entire NFL, and then the red zone work makes his 7 touchdowns like actually legit. He is dominating the red zone, among the wide receiver position inside the 10 at the goal, you name it. And Thielen has 6 of his touchdowns this year on end zone targets alone. And then you look at Justin Jefferson, who has just 1 end zone target all season. So they're really just going to Thielen in the end zone, and nobody else. Thielen has 9 of the 13 team targets in the end zone, actually. Just outrageously selfish.
The other team, it would be like a tight end or something, but they're going to Thielen.
Yeah. And isn't that funny? Like, that's why the tight ends have shit the bed so catastrophically for fantasy this year from the Vikings and for fantasy owners and dynasty owners. And yeah, let's not even talk about those guys.
You'll make Jimmy cry.
Yeah, no doubt. No
Totally.
doubt. Yeah, that's a tough one, Irv. Poor bastard. And then Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is just like a net 0 now too. Sucks.
Oh yeah,
he's bound to have a one-handed touchdown catch here soon.
Just so old. Oh my god, that was so nice this year. Yeah. Yeah, that touchdown.
He's got like 1 or 2 every year, and then he does nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Gets on Sportsnet, and he's happy.
Nice, boys.
So maybe do you guys still have like 5-10 minutes here really quick?
I can do 5. Let's do it.
Yeah, I can do 5 minutes. Let me know.
Okay, so the games we're missing, Houston and Jacksonville. That's a 50.5 point total. The Jaguars are 7-point underdogs. Do you guys like Houston or Jacksonville in that game? With the 7
Houston.
points.
Houston.
I think Houston.
Yeah.
Cool. If the Jaguars allow more than 30 points this game, they'll set an NFL record for the most consecutive games with 30 points allowed to the opposing offense.
Nice.
Brandon Cooks definitely a big watch in this one, right? How mad are you, Jules, about
Fire
Will
him up.
Fuller?
Yeah, you know what? Brandon Cooks proved me wrong. I'll give you that one. And
That's right.
But no, you can fire him up there. He's he looks like a target hog in that offense.
How mad?
Go on.
How mad are you that Will Fuller is not a Green Bay Packer, or did MVS soften that blow quite significantly?
Man, MVS dropped a wide open 3rd down conversion there's like a 3-yard catch, and it hit his hand. I'm like, man, you can't do that in the NFL. You got to be better. And Will Fuller would have been a fantastic addition to that Packers offense. So, it is a bit upsetting, but we got Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, so I think we're doing all right.
Yeah, Will Fuller and his little dick beaters have been known to drop a deep ball or 2 in his time.
Yes,
Shout out! I've stolen a joke from good buddy Trent, who actually changed his team name to When the Luton Starts, which I thought was team name of the year in fantasy so far. Because Jake Luton.
I was thinking highfalutin. You can say highfalutin.
Yep. I'm Luton free this week. Are you guys Luton free this week?
No, it's all Luton for me. All Luton.
Because I straight up think you could play him over like Drew Lock.
Unfortunately, I'm actually starting him in the Canada Cup this week.
Nice.
So yeah,
Well,
big
Spencer
desperation.
doesn't play. I'm starting him with Scotty Fishbowl. So
Nice.
Totally. So I think like if you're starting, a Keanu Reeves replacement player, you may as well be starting one who's going against Houston, right? In a possible shootout. And then James Robinson, we love. And then, the wide receivers there, you really have some tough decisions to make still, especially when it comes to buying or selling DJ Chark rest of season. The other game we're skipping is the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So is Zeke playing in this one? Is he not?
No, he's not.
They are expecting to not have him in the game this week. So fire up your Tony Pollards, but be careful with that because Pittsburgh's defense is brutal. I know we saw J.K. Dobbins do it last week, but the Dallas running game. The Dallas running game is not the Baltimore running game, and it's not the Dallas running game of old either. So if you have to start Tony as a flex, you can do it, but don't be upset if he doesn't put up a 15-point game for you. What do our Steelers fans think about this one?
I think this is a great lesson in football. Wait till people see an elite an elite defensive line go against like an offensive line of the Cowboys caliber right now, it's gonna be a show. What do you guys think the total is in this game?
I'm hitting under whatever it is.
It can't be in the 50s.
It, but it's going to be lower.
I'm hitting under. I don't know what it is.
What is it?
It's 40. It's 42.
Yeah.
Oh,
there's like 24 points scored in this game, and 21 of those go to the Steelers.
Yeah.
Probably
and they're 14.
And 21 of that's the defense score.
Exactly.
Points, Ty? Ooh.
14-point favorites.
I'd probably
on the
be hitting
road
that.
in Jerry's world. You know, as a Steelers fan, you do see them like blow a just inexplicable game once every year. Usually, Ben Roethlisberger has still not had that like 5 interception game. We all know. So, you know, it's funny that
think that's this game.
No, and like all likelihood should not be it. Same with James Conner, top 5 running back this week. Benny Snell might even get in the end zone because of that 14-point spread. And then you look at Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Chase Claypool. Thank God we didn't have to talk about them because they're all like literally wide receiver 22 in ECR for Deontay, wide receiver 21 for Juju, wide receiver 19 for Claypool. You know, because they're predicting it's a blow up spot.
Just start them and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And D.Brown even, you know, tight end 13 in ECR. And then on the Dallas side, you know, we don't have to say anything. Zeke, sit. And CeeDee Lamb, sit. CeeDee Lamb's like shockingly high in expert consensus ranking. So that's an interesting one. And the other one we didn't talk about is Chicago and Tennessee. That's another one that's like a better football game than it is anything to do with fantasy. You got, you know, Allen Robinson. That's about it. That's all I can think of. Nick Foles is probably like a top 20 quarterback in this matchup, though, I think, in a super flex league. He's very interesting. David Montgomery's probably like a borderline RB1, but, you know, can he keep up that receiving work? I think that's really interesting what's going on there. Darnell Mooney, top 40 wide receiver this week, guys.
Yeah, on the chance that Foles can actually hit him with a fucking deep shot, because he hasn't done it yet.
It's gonna happen though.
It's been within 5 feet, Trav.
Yeah, that's the standard we are holding Big Dick Nick to. At least he's got that hog in his pants, I guess.
So I can't not, Trav. Is this the beginning of the end for Ryan Tannehill against the Bears this week?
No, it is not. It's not.
Never the end of Tannehill. No, okay.
I don't think so.
What a thrill. Definitely sitting him in my books. So like he's not a top 12 quarterback for me this week. Derrick Henry is a stud. AJ Brown is not a top 12 wide receiver for me. He's actually wide receiver 14 in expert consensus ranking too.
What about Corey Davis?
Oh yeah, that's the guy that's the guy we would have hit, right? So would you start Corey Davis or Antonio Brown, Jules?
Oof. That's close.
Tony.
Yeah.
Who said they would start Devontae Parker earlier tonight?
I did.
Would you start Parker or Corey Davis?
I think I'll start Corey Davis there.
Yeah.
I'd start Parker, I think.
Trav, what do you got? Is Adam Humphries out in this game? It doesn't really matter. He wasn't
Yeah.
Like, I guess it matters because Corey Davis could like get into the slot and play some big slot snaps in this game for sure. But I don't think like Chicago is like one of the elite man cover defenses. So I don't think Adam Humphries is factoring the game plan a lot. Jonnu Smith is really just one of those fluctuators. You know, I had to make a decision between Jonnu and Evan Ingram this week. I almost just jumped off the bridge that I was standing on while I was trying to make that decision. I wish I had Jared Cook. That's how annoying that situation felt. The only other game we didn't do was the New York Giants at Washington. That's an ugly one. 3 wins between them.
Who I love in that one? I love Washington's defense in that game.
Oh yeah, good call. Yeah, dude, Kendall Fuller is probably the best cornerback in football right now.
And that DSP is actually top 5 in basically every statistical category against the run, against the pass.
Riverboat Ron.
So far. And you know, we know what Daniel Jones does with the football in his hand. It's not complete passes.
You mean the bread loaf? You're referring to the bread loaf, yeah. So three wins
And if
between
you
those teams.
still play with defenses in your league, get them out.
Mhm.
I have to agree, but I don't run all my leagues.
I don't know. I don't mind it.
Oh shit!
I'm only half joking there. I'm a little bit old school in that I don't actually hate when there's a kicker and a defense in the league, depending on the league. Like if it's Dynasty, no thanks. But if it's a redraft, I'll play with it.
That's fair, especially in redraft.
Hot take.
Now,
Hot take.
then you get the fun of streaming defenses and stuff too. It's not.
It's kind of fun, yeah.
I just take Pittsburgh. It's all good.
Ask
I've
Ty.
been taking the Patriots.
I've been riding Pittsburgh in that ESPN league we're in, Ty.
Uh-huh.
Fuck, that defense has been
I
awesome.
currently have my defense spot empty right now because I think I'm taking a loss in that league this week.
Just gonna flex on your opponent.
Yeah, I had Tunyon in the lineup. I had Hasty in that lineup.
Ooh.
Yeah, hasty fuck yeah.
Yeah, my whole team's like decimated in that one. Like I do have Christian McCaffrey coming back. I have Pat Mahomes. That's not a bad team. So
yeah,
Aaron Jones coming back. So
I am surging.
I know it's so unfair. Like 2 weeks ago, my team looked great, and now most are like everyone on that team has just been decimated.
I beat you.
That's right. Yeah, that was my first loss of the season. I think
it was. Yeah, it was taking down Juggernaut left, right, and center here. What do we think? What do we think about riding out here, boys? That was quite the run we had tonight. Just about 3.5 motherfuckers.
Thanks so much for staying, guys.
We got through most of the games. One last game was the Monday nighter. We didn't hit the New England Patriots and the New York Jets.
I totally forgot.
Yeah, it's not really like super interesting game, except for maybe Damian Harris. I'm down for Damian Harris. But aside from that, yeah, I think we had a good one tonight.
Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, Jacoby Myers.
The old Yahoo dropped somebody before waivers, so just like speculatively add him, drop the guy you're going to drop in waivers the next day, pick up Jacoby Myers on Monday morning.
Boom.
And Denzel Mims, who has been exceptional outside of every quarter that isn't the first quarter this season.
All right, so we got our man Brian Bailey at the FF Aviator. Thank you for stopping by, Brian. Much appreciated, dude.
Yeah, man, this is fun having another extended session with you guys.
Are you surprised? Are you really surprised?
No, not for TNFF.
And Jules, we can find you at the point at the point after FF. At the point after FF. Thanks for coming tonight, buddy. I appreciate it. It's an hour later for you where you're at, so thanks for sticking it out with us.
Yeah, man, I was happy to be here. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate you boys. I learn a lot when I get to come on here with you guys, so it's a pleasure.
Nice, man. Yeah, and Ty at TNFF Tyrell, dude, I want to just give a big thank you to you because you lined up the show sheet for our Saturday night sessions. You're doing an awesome job with that, keeping us in line, keeping us on track. So we appreciate that a ton. Yeah, thanks, buddy. It was a good Saturday night.
My pleasure. I'll try and be more on point next week. I was a little off my game tonight. Maybe I'll
it was good.
You know, I'll do a little less West Coasting next week for sure.
Oh, it's good, man. It's good. We're all just kind of feeling this out. This is only our second episode, so hopefully anybody who tuned in liked the content that they stuck around for. Please come back next week. We will have it out as an audio version. So if you want to flip over there and give us a DL on that, we'd be pumped for that. Find the work at TrueNorthFFB.com, on Twitter at TrueNorthFFB. And until next week, peace out, guys.
See you later, boys. Cheers.